Just because I cursed my boss after work, I actually transmigrated into a villainess despised by the entire nation. I thought I'd be cannon fodder, paving the way for the heroine's romance, but discovered the crown prince rejected his engagement to the saintess for me. The chief mage overturned the entire magic council for me. The elf knight changed for me, constantly seeking my affection. I never imagined these four top-tier gods would all become jealous over me. On a night in the 21st century, I dragged my exhausted body home to my rental apartment after work. Just like many other corporate slaves, my supervisor's ridiculous demands kept looping endlessly in my mind. Sigh. Because I was too gullible, I joined this exploitative company right after graduation. Even now, I'm still doing the work of 3 people alone. Thinking about this, I immediately crack open a cold beer. I tilt my head back and chug several gulps, the cold liquid sliding down my throat. It feels so good. My scalp tingles. I finally feel alive again. Actually, I've long grown accustomed to this corporate slave life, although I get frustrated at work every day. After work, I furiously curse the company and my boss. This way, I feel much better inside and life goes on. But occasionally, I still stare blankly at the ceiling. I think if life continues like this, I might as well start over in another world. But who knew my words would become prophecy? When I wake up again, I'm stunned by everything around me. This dazzling golden luxury suite is nothing like my tiny rental room. And these delicate hands in front of me could be hand cream models where my rough hands were worn down from typing on keyboards. Just as I'm wondering about this, a maid enters, carrying a tray. Seeing me awake, she immediately turns and runs out. Her movements panicked. I quickly get out of bed, wanting to call her back, but discover something seems off about my reflection in the mirror. After looking closely, ooh, who is this red-haired beauty in the mirror? These eyes shine like freshly polished gemstones, and this aura radiates such overwhelming nobility. I press my face close to the mirror frantically. What on earth is happening? Hey, couldn't transmigration at least give me a heads up? Suddenly, chaotic memories flood into my brain like someone inserted a USB drive full of dirt. Turns out the original owner is Christina von Luck, a notorious villainess. She loved making things difficult for servants, fabricated her own experiences, engaged in smuggling to satisfy her selfish desires, and even deliberately picked fights with her fiancé. She committed baskets full of misdeeds. Her reputation is so bad, even dogs avoid her. I instantly feel utterly helpless. Why does everyone else transmigrate before the plot begins? Well, I'm dropped right into a blame-taking situation. Even more panic-inducing, I don't even remember if I died. Before I can figure things out, the maid brings in a doctor. Facing his questions, I immediately deploy my corporate survival skills. I act weak, saying my head hurts and I can't remember clearly. My mind is completely blank, like files have been deleted. My tone sounds innocent. The doctor nods gently, saying, "Memory loss from shock is normal." He tells me to rest well and perhaps I'll remember in a few days. Hearing this, I quickly go along with his words. Then he observes me for a while and says my way of speaking seems different from before. This is not good. So I quickly change the subject, saying I want to rest and asking them to leave first. My mind screams warnings. I must not reveal the truth. Talking about body swapping will make them think I'm crazy. The original owner is already in trouble. Getting exposed means meeting my end. I cannot take that risk. Just as I learn from the maid that I've been asleep for 3 days and nights, the door suddenly slams open with a bang. A group of knights surges in their imposing presence, terrifying. He says His Majesty demands my immediate presence at court. I point at myself with trembling hands, disbelief all over my face. An audience. A villainess like me doesn't deserve that. Right. The knight says nothing more, simply lifting his chin coldly and gesturing for me to follow. His tone carries a warning, as if telling me not to try anything clever. I curse the original owner internally. Why should I take the fall for your misdeeds? A corporate slave's life is truly miserable. After being led into the great hall by the knights, I find the oppressive atmosphere overwhelming. The emperor, seated on the high throne, wears magnificent court robes. His gaze sweeps over me as he asks if I know why I've been summoned. My mind goes blank with nothing but panic. So, I stammer that I don't know. As the emperor's aura instantly darkens, the lead knight beside me comes to my rescue. Explaining that I've lost my memory from falling down the stairs, I nod vigorously. I must get through this somehow. At this moment, the original owner's fiancé, Philip, suddenly steps forward. His crown prince's court attire makes him look even colder, and the disgust in his eyes practically overflows. I quickly shrink into invisibility, burying my head lower, afraid of being targeted for scolding. Philip says, "My crimes won't disappear because of memory loss." His tone has no softness whatsoever. Cold sweat breaks out on my back. I don't understand what crimes he's talking about, so I hurriedly and respectfully ask what happened. Philip says that 3 days ago at 2:00 the afternoon, the original owner tried to push Priscilla down the stairs but ended up falling down herself instead. Even though I'm a Marcus's daughter, I still must answer for this crime. Hearing this, I suddenly remember that person. Priscilla is an adopted commoner lady. The original owner constantly mocked her. I complain internally. But even if the original owner disliked her, there was no need to go this far. I want to defend myself, but my throat feels blocked and I cannot speak. I look up and meet Philip's gaze along with the Emperor's furious stare. The knights also cast strange looks at me. At this moment, I finally understand what it means to be surrounded on all sides. My legs go weak and I can barely stand, almost collapsing. Then Philip says, "Although Priscilla wasn't injured, I'm a dangerous person who must be monitored around the clock." I feel relieved, but also panicked. At least I won't be beheaded. But does monitoring mean being locked in a dark room? The knight beside me suddenly removes his helmet. I'm immediately stunned. His features are three-dimensional and profound, his nose bridge high and prominent like a manga protagonist. I swear I've never seen such a handsome man in my life. Just as I'm secretly fawning over him, he tells me expressionlessly that starting today, I'll be living with him. Living together. Isn't this 24-hour surveillance? So I quickly suggest I can stay at the Maris's estate and promise not to cause trouble. But Philip rejects this, saying he doesn't trust me. I'm left speechless. The original owner has so many scandals, she's really dragging me down completely. At this point, the Emperor adds that the lead knight will decide on his own whether to execute me. My legs nearly turn to jelly from fear. I don't want to die right after transmigrating. The knight also says whether my memory loss is real will soon become clear. Looking at his determined expression, I become even more guilty and frightened. On the way back, the knight and I sit facing each other. The silence frightening. I steal glances at him, thinking my life depends entirely on his mood. This is far too passive. Memories surface in my mind. The man before me is Cedric, the Duke's heir. After the original owner broke off her engagement with Philip, she pestered him, doing countless foolish things to flirt with him. Cedric has long been thoroughly annoyed. Thinking about this, my heart goes cold. This is a hellish starting situation. If I cause more trouble, I'm finished. The carriage arrives at the Duke's estate just as I'm about to get off, silently mourning my hellish life ahead. Cedric extends his hand to me in a gentlemanly manner. I feel somewhat grateful yet confused. A supervisor being so gentlemanly to a prisoner. After getting off the carriage, I look at the estate gates and my eyes go wide. I envy this. This is a place a corporate slave could never afford in a lifetime. The butler leads the servants forward, bowing and welcoming us back to the estate. This is the first time I've seen such a grand reception. The butler inquires about my background. Cedric says, "Please take care of it." And the butler understands. The butler makes a welcoming gesture and leads me to my room, respectful yet maintaining distance. Then the butler brings me to my prison. I'm shocked. The luxury is dazzling. I quickly say a small room would be fine. No need for such luxury, but the butler says this is Cedric's order and cannot be changed. Then he points to a bell nearby. "Ring if you need anything." There are changes of clothes in the wardrobe. He also tells me to stay in the room and not go out. After speaking, he closes the door and leaves quickly. I watch his back and complain. He left so fast. I didn't realize I was this unwelcome. I sigh internally. The butler must know the reason I'm here. I reach out to open the wardrobe, wanting to change clothes. I'm shocked again. The wardrobe is full of beautiful dresses in numerous styles. At this moment, there's suddenly a sound behind me asking if something happened. I jump in fright, nearly hitting the wardrobe corner. I turn around to see a maid holding a tray with an expressionless face. She says she knocked but got no response, so she entered on her own and asks if the dresses aren't enough and if she should add more. Enough. Enough. There are too many. I could never wear them all. The maid introduces herself as Hannah, saying she's here to serve me. She still speaks without emotion. She adds that her face is cold because her muscles are stiff and tells me not to mind it. I look at her expressionless face helplessly. I'm already starting to worry about my future life here. Hannah pauses and says, "The meal is ready." She'll take me to the dining room where Cedric is waiting for me. Hearing this, I instantly become nervous. My heart pounds. I have to see him again. Could he be planning to lecture me? Following Hannah into the dining room, maids push carts over, filled with various delicacies. My eyes widen. These are fine foods a low-paid corporate slave could never taste in a lifetime. I instantly forget about appearances and wolf down the food. My heart fills with happiness. This is so delicious. Just as I'm eating enthusiastically, I suddenly feel a gaze watching me. I look up to see Cedric. My heart panics and I start trembling. Why does he keep watching me? Are my eating manners too ugly? My mind starts overthinking. Could I be punished for violating dining etiquette? Cedric finally speaks. Mentioning the food seems to suit my taste. His tone is calm. I quickly nod, feeling relieved inside. At least he's not scolding me. Afterward, we fall into silence. I wail internally. The sudden quiet is the worst. The awkwardness makes me want to dig into the ground. I can only find topics mentioning the room and dresses are beautiful and expressing gratitude. Cedric says this is appropriate, adding that although I'm a criminal, I'm also his guest. I'm puzzled inside. I originally thought I'd be treated harshly, but I didn't expect such courteous treatment. Before I can figure it out, Cedric says he'll leave first and tells me to take my time eating. I watch his back and breathe a sigh of relief. Finally, no more awkwardness. I eat while pondering. As long as I'm still being monitored, the crisis isn't resolved. I need to increase his favorability. But what do noble ladies usually do? The original owner only knew how to play, but I can't sit idle. Just as I'm worrying, I see a maid coming to collect plates. I suddenly have a great idea. Cleaning. So the next day, I borrow a maid's uniform from Hannah and earnestly sweep the courtyard. Before long, I see Cedric and the butler approaching. My heart panics slightly. Cedric sees me and frowns, asking what I'm doing. His tone carries curiosity. I quickly say I'm too bored, so I'm cleaning to pass the time. This confuses him even more. He doesn't understand the connection between boredom and cleaning, so I explain that labor suits me. After all, corporate workers feel uncomfortable when resting. Cedric still expresses confusion. After all, I previously loved ordering servants around and never did anything myself. I feel extremely embarrassed and add in a small voice that I also want to atone and make up for past wrongs. Cedric is stunned for a moment after hearing this, saying he's never heard me express guilt before. I quickly express my determination, saying I know I was wrong and want to do something. My eyes sparkle. Cedric is silent for a few seconds, then simply says, "Do as I wish," and doesn't stop me. My heart leaps with joy. Excellent. He agreed and didn't object to me working. The butler is about to step forward to dissuade, but Cedric says to let me do as I please. After all, in his view, I'll soon grow tired and dump all this work on others. Even the butler thinks the same. I didn't expect that being so sincere would earn me no praise at all. I roll up my sleeves defiantly. Just watch. I'll make you see me in a new light. Afterward, I clean even more vigorously, wiping tables and tidying the garden, completely energized. The maid's gazes change, muttering internally about how this lady has changed. In the blink of an eye, a month passes. I've mastered all the servants' duties in the estate. When maids ask where things go, I can answer casually. When servants ask about old matters, I say they've been organized long ago. I can even catch Henna napping on the job. All the servants in the estate trust me. I feel secretly proud. I didn't expect to be so suited for this work. Corporate survival skills are truly useful. During this month, I also figure out how things work in the estate. First, the estate has few servants because Cedric prefers quiet and dislikes crowds. Second, the current duke is Cedric's grandfather, quite elderly and rarely goes out. The title will soon pass to Cedric. Finally, and most devastating magic exists in this world. Yet I can do nothing because the original owner had no magical power at all. I wail at the sky. What a shame. Transmigrating with no cheatability and not even magic. I see something that looks like clothing hanging from a tree, so I decide to go retrieve it. I climb the tree swiftly and skillfully. I grab the item and open it to look. It's actually a portrait of Cedric. The resemblance is striking. When I see the signature is Sebastian the butler's name, I'm shocked. The butler has this kind of hobby. If he finds out I discovered his secret, I wonder if I'll face consequences. I look down and it's actually Cedric. My heart panics. If he sees me holding his portrait, he'll definitely misunderstand. I quickly try to climb down from the tree to hide, but my foot slips. My body immediately loses balance. I scream internally. I'm done for. I'm going to fall and it will hurt terribly. The next second, Cedric catches me. I land on top of him, just as I want to sincerely apologize. Seeing his face up close fills my mind completely with the thought, what a beautiful face. Therefore, before I can react, Cedric suddenly grabs my hand and changes position. He forcefully pins me to the ground, pressing down on top of me. The movement is swift and sudden. My face instantly flushes red. My mind goes blank, completely confused. What just happened? Cedric comes to his senses and immediately gets up. He explains this is a knight's conditioned reflex, saying, being pinned on the battlefield endangers one's life. I stand frozen for a moment before reacting. I quickly bow, saying it's fine and thanking him, then turn and run because, at this moment, for some reason my heart keeps racing wildly. This is truly strange. Cedric watches my retreating figure standing motionless in place, falling into silence. In the room, the butler sees Cedric's expression and steps forward to ask if he's unwell. Cedric looks puzzled and asks what the butler means. So, the butler mentions his face seems somewhat red right now. Hearing this, Cedric's heart stirs slightly. However, he stubbornly says the butler saw wrong, turning to open the wardrobe to find clothes, his ear tips still burning. The butler asks where he's going. He only says he's going into the city and needs to report regularly. At the palace reception room, Crown Prince Philip is asking Cedric about the grimoire, questioning whether he's learned the hiding place from Christina. Cedric shakes his head and says, "Not yet." Philip's tone is urgent as he presses why there's been no progress after living together for a month. Cedric falls silent, neither defending himself nor explaining further. Philip brings up what Cedric reported in his letters, asking if it refers to Christina doing servant work. He adds that the former Christina would never have thoughts of atonement, suspecting whether Cedric has taken her words seriously. Cedric says, "Of course not," but his words pause, adding a hesitation. However, Philip interrupts him, saying there's no time to let him drag this out. His tone is serious. He instructs him to find out the grimoire's whereabouts as soon as possible. Cedric naturally understands the importance of this, because the grimoire is a relic of the founding archmage, and this national treasure, the Grimoire of Final Hours, carries a legend in its legacy. According to legend, anyone opening it except the Chosen One will lead to the world's destruction. However, this legend's truth is difficult to discern, and whether the Chosen One truly exists remains unknown. Philip sighed that under such tight security, the grimoire could vanish into thin air. The only clue is that witnesses saw Christina at the scene. Given the current situation, she's the most likely thief. Hearing this, Cedric states that witness testimony alone cannot justify a formal arrest. Philip sighs, saying concrete evidence is indeed needed before taking action. He also instructs Cedric to keep his actions discreet and not too conspicuous. Because Christina's family holds significant power, making the situation delicate to handle, he hopes to avoid further deterioration in relations with their family, which would create problems. Cedric interjects to remind him that the relationship deteriorated entirely because Philip broke off the engagement. Philip awkwardly responds, "That's precisely why he asked Cedric to approach her. After all, Christina is so interested in Cedric that building a good relationship shouldn't be difficult." After hearing this, Cedric remains silent, neither responding nor taking a stance. Philip asks what's wrong and whether he's facing difficulties. Only then does Cedric speak, asking how exactly to build a good relationship. Philip spits out the coffee he just drank, clearly not expecting Cedric to be completely clueless. He says helplessly that he'll have to teach from scratch, his tone full of disbelief. He then offers suggestions, telling him to try giving gifts, dining and chatting together, and perhaps smiling at her. Cedric listens with a completely blank expression, clearly having no experience with such matters. Seeing this, Philip says no more, only asking him to do his best, his tone full of helplessness. In the carriage on the way back, Cedric repeatedly recalls Philip's words. He remembers Philip reminding him not to take Christina's actions seriously. Then he recalls how Christina has been during this month at his estate. He begins to feel confused. After returning to the Duke's estate, he stands on the balcony, observing Christina's every movement. Seeing her discussing work with the servants, he thinks about how she's diligently working today, completely different from before. He can't help but wonder if she's an imposter, but quickly dismisses this thought since he's already confirmed she's the real person. He feels the difference between her current self and his perception of her is too vast. She no longer has her former overbearing arrogance. Moreover, she bustles about working earnestly, lively like a small animal. He finds himself unable to look away, realizing his thoughts have strayed off track. Cedric quickly snaps back to attention. He wonders silently why he's like this. Perhaps observing too long has caused him to develop sympathetic feelings. Scenes from earlier resurface in his mind. He happened to see her climbing a tree to retrieve something. Accidentally, he saw her lose her footing and fall from the tree. At that moment, he rushed forward without thinking. The instant he caught her, her entire weight pressed down on him. That was the first time he saw her face so clearly at such close range. His heartbeat suddenly accelerated uncontrollably. The more he thinks about it, the more certain he becomes that Christina is truly like a different person. I stare at the pile of shimmering clothes and jewelry that suddenly appeared in my room, my mind going blank. I quickly call Hannah over and ask what's going on. Hannah holds the gift boxes and says, "These are all gifts Cedric wants to give me." I'm completely stunned after hearing this, unable to believe my ears. What Cedric sent these, I ponder. This is too unexpected. But the next second, I realize something is wrong. My whole being feels unsettled. Today clearly isn't my birthday. Why would he send so many gifts? Hannah picks up these gifts and speculates that perhaps Cedric has fallen for me. I immediately dismiss the speculation. Then, a terrible thought flashes through my mind. Could these be gifts before execution? Could he be settling accounts for that previous incident? Thinking this, I can't help but burst into tears, my heart filled with fear. At this moment, there's a knock at the door. Hannah hurries to answer it. The door opens and Cedric's tall figure appears before me, pounding wildly. However, he only calmly asks my opinion of the gifts. His voice reveals no emotion. Even though he asks this, I'm so nervous my tongue nearly ties itself in knots. Meeting his profound gaze, I tremble all over in fear, stammering that I'm very happy, my voice shaking uncontrollably. He sees through my forced response at once, telling me I needn't accept against my will. I hastily explain, it's not that I dislike them, just that I have no use for so many valuable items. He meets my eyes, then suddenly proposes dining together and moreover eating every meal together. Not understanding his intention. In the dining room, we sit facing each other. The atmosphere is extremely delicate. This familiar scene reminds me of previous awkward experiences, so I muster courage to ask if he's looking for me about something. He says there's nothing particular, just wanting to spend time with me. This answer makes my little heart skip a beat involuntarily. I wonder if he's really fallen for me, as Hannah suggested, but I quickly come to my senses. How could this be possible? My character setting is a vicious AS. Then he smiles softly and says, "Having company for meals feels quite nice." These words are like a ray of sunlight quietly illuminating my heart. I wonder if all this time he's been dining alone in this vast mansion. Later, Hannah combs my hair while listening to me ramble. I ask puzzly why he specifically wants to dine together when we already see each other often during work. Hannah says playfully that perhaps he wants to monitor me openly. This statement makes me instantly nervous like a startled rabbit, but she seriously adds that she thinks he wants to close the distance between us. I wave my hands in denial repeatedly, yet my cheeks flush involuntarily. However, thinking carefully, I really must work hard to improve my relationship with Cedric. So, at dinner, I start looking for topics, asking if his parents live with him. He answers briefly that they have passed away. His voice suddenly becomes somewhat somber. I immediately realize I said the wrong thing and wish I could bite off my tongue. His expression becomes somewhat gloomy, so he rises to take his leave and exits the dining room. I'm filled with regret, cursing myself for being such a fool. I've ruined the relationship that was finally improving. Just as I open the door, I encounter the butler passing by. So, like a child who's done wrong, I explain the situation to the butler. After listening, the butler sighs softly and says, I see. I hesitate before asking about Cedric's parents' past. The butler indicates his willingness to tell me about this matter, but seriously asks if I'm prepared to touch upon private matters. I recall Cedric's sad expression just now. This truly troubles me, so I must understand the full story in order to apologize properly and comfort him better. So I nod firmly, indicating I've made up my mind to understand him. The butler begins recounting that sealed past, his voice low and sorrowful. It turns out Cedric's parents were victims of a political marriage. After his birth, his parents went their separate ways, paying him no attention. So the old duke, unable to bear this, took in his young grandson to raise him strictly. But that was not familiar love at all, rather training a perfect tool and heir. Later, his parents both perished in an accident. Cedric grew up not understanding what love is, nor how to love. These words make my heart ache with waves of sorrow, not understanding being loved nor loving others. This experience is so similar to hers. After finishing the story, the butler takes his leave. He watches my contemplative expression from upstairs, softly blessing and hoping I can bring good results for Cedric. The next morning, Cedric is handling official business in his study. After much mental preparation, I finally knock on his study door. Hearing his permission, I push open the door and walk before him. He looks up, his gaze questioning. I keep encouraging myself internally. Then I bow 90 degrees to Cedric, apologizing loudly and presenting the apology gift I prepared to show my sincerity. Surprise flashes in his eyes, clearly not expecting me to come apologize on my own. Then he rises and responds that he also shouldn't have left suddenly, showing insufficient maturity. I quickly shake my head, insisting that prying into his privacy was my fault. Cedric hesitates to speak, finally gently indicating I should lift my head first. I timidly straighten up. I hand him the paper bag, saying, although the appearance isn't much, I'm confident in the cookie taste. So Cedric curiously opens the paper bag. The sweet aroma of cookies immediately wafts out. He asks incredulously whether I made these myself. I nod vigorously, emphasizing these were specially prepared for him. He repeats these words, his eyes suddenly lighting up brightly, watching his delighted expression. I can't help but recall my childhood wishes. Deep in memory, when I was young, I always gazed longingly at my parents' backs. I wanted to share my drawings with Mother, but she never spared me a glance. I wanted to chase after Brother to share my joy, but only received impatient rejection. The clearest scene in memory is me sitting alone on one side of the dining table, watching parents and Brother on the other side, happily sharing cake while I felt like an outsider. Pulling away from the memories, my heart still feels faintly bitter. At this moment, Cedric picks up a cookie. Carefully bringing it to his mouth, he tastes it carefully. I also feel somewhat nervous, not knowing if it suits his taste. Fortunately, I see his face gradually show an expression of enjoyment. He praises how delicious it is, his gaze becoming especially soft. I breathe a sigh of relief immediately. How wonderful, little flowers of joy bloom in my heart. At this moment, Cedric's gaze toward me changes. I cannot read the emotion within, completely immersed in the joy that the cookies suit his taste. I don't even notice his cheeks beginning to flush. After leaving the study, I walk down the corridor, secretly elated that he seems happy, although only a small step forward. I feel the distance between us has closed somewhat. Suddenly, a sharp, stabbing pain strikes from my chest. I stagger and lean against the wall to barely steady myself. Then I discover with horror that breathing becomes increasingly difficult. My vision begins to blur. My body slides down uncontrollably, consciousness gradually fading. I use my last strength to call for help, but no one responds. Soon after, I'm discovered and brought to my room. The doctor now stands by the bed, checking my pulse with Cedric and the butler keeping watch nearby. Then the doctor expresses helplessly that he is powerless regarding the situation. Cedric angrily orders the butler to quickly summon other doctors. The doctor hastily explains this is because it exceeds their capabilities, requiring expert assistance. So Cedric brings in a purple-haired handsome man who directly points out that I'm experiencing mana overflow. Cedric frowns and asks for specifics. The purple-haired man explains leisurely that this is a rare case, so it's normal he wouldn't know. Then he raises an eyebrow and teases that Cedric dares to order around the royal court's chief genius mage, perhaps mistaking himself for royalty. Cedric impatiently interrupts his teasing, telling him to explain the situation quickly. Hearing this, the mage jokes that this is why he has no friends and should reflect on himself. The mage explains that Christina's body now contains immense magic power that has spiraled out of control. If she cannot withstand it, she will likely die. Hearing this, Cedric's heart sinks. The mage finds it strange that Christina should have no magic power, though these are indeed symptoms of mana overflow. Cedric cares nothing for such details and urgently demands to know how to save her. The mage says he can stabilize her by infusing his own magic power into her body. If the magic circulation goes smoothly, she will wake soon. He emphasizes that while this would be dangerous for an ordinary mage, his success rate is 100%. Cedric immediately urges him to begin the treatment at once. The mage deliberately drags out his words, saying that he was not actually asked to treat her. He asks whether she should really be saved, considering she is a criminal. He reminds Cedric that he was always irritated by her pursuit. He hints that it would be fine to simply leave her be. Cedric would never stand by and watch Christina die. Moreover, he must obtain information about the grimoire from her. At this moment, her radiant smile flashes through his mind. His voice becomes firm as he clearly demands that Christina be healed. The mage nods knowingly, indicating he understands. He then begins to channel his magic power. He feels somewhat moved that Cedric, who shows indifference to everyone, has actually developed feelings, and the object of those feelings is Christina of all people. The instant his magic touches her soul, he suddenly senses something abnormal. A playful smile crosses his face as he finds this extremely interesting. At this moment, I am walking along a staircase glittering with starlight. I look around in confusion, recalling how I fainted. I fearfully wonder whether I might already be dead. Thinking about how I worked so hard to live in that world only to end up like this, I cannot help but cry out loud. This is simply too cruel. Suddenly, a breathtakingly beautiful woman with long blue-violet hair appears before me. Her divine presence makes even the surrounding starlight pale in comparison. I ask in surprise who she is. The woman gently lifts the hood of her cloak, revealing her stunning features. In a voice like heavenly music, she says, "Welcome back, Christina." She smiles and corrects herself, saying she should call me Say instead. I am utterly shocked. How does she know my original name? I ask her who she really is. She merely laughs softly and says she knows everything about me, which leaves me even more bewildered. I search desperately through my memories, but cannot recall anything. I have never seen this mysterious beauty before. She elegantly raises her hand. A gentle light suddenly emanates from her palm, gathering into an orb. She says mysteriously that she must return this very important thing to me. I carefully receive the glowing orb, filled with doubt and curiosity. This is clearly the first time I have seen this mysterious sphere of light. Just as I am about to ask, I notice that her figure is gradually becoming transparent. Before vanishing completely, she says softly that I must persevere in the future. I reach out urgently, wanting to ask what she means by the future, but she does not answer, and instead disappears bit by bit before my eyes. She leaves me alone with tears streaming down my face, because I am not even certain whether I am still alive. Suddenly, a pleasant voice pulls my consciousness back to the real world. Opening my eyes, I see a handsome, purple-haired man staring at me with great interest. This startles me so much that I start screaming. My reaction amuses him and he laughs, appearing quite delighted. He introduces himself as Cyril, the genius royal court mage, and mentions he has long heard of my reputation. I calm down somewhat and begin to wonder why a mage would appear in my room. He explains that this is because I experienced mana overflow symptoms, a rare condition that only afflicts those with excessive magic power in their bodies. Hearing this, I become even more confused. I tell him that my body should originally have no magic power. He nods thoughtfully and says that originally there was indeed none, but now for some reason there is. I immediately think of that strange dream, feeling certain the two must be connected. He continues to explain that although he has temporarily suppressed the situation with his magic power, if things continue like this, my life will likely be in danger. This news makes me freeze instantly. My heart fills with fear in an instant. I do not want to die young at this age. He gently pokes my face and reassures me that this is why he is here. I nod blankly, not yet fully recovered from the shock. At this moment, the door is pushed open and Cedric and the others rush in anxiously. They hurry to the bedside, each of them looking concerned about me. Cedric urgently asks whether my condition has improved. He glares at Cyril and points out that I have been unconscious for 3 whole days. Cyril explains from the side that under normal circumstances, I should have awakened in 1 day. Perhaps it is because my constitution is rather special. I am even more convinced that this must be related to that strange dream. The butler expresses relief that I have awakened. Hannah asks curiously whether the tornado in the room was Cyril's magic. Cyril proudly admits that it was his work and asks whether everyone was impressed. The butler helplessly points out that this magic caused furniture damage that requires compensation. Cyril immediately changes the subject and asks how I am feeling now. He gently touches the top of my head and his expression suddenly becomes thoughtful. I nervously ask whether something bad has emerged. He denies this and instead announces surprising news. He says I can now use white magic. This unfamiliar term causes everyone present to show confused expressions. Cyril explains that this is a rather rare type of magic that only those with the blessing of the moon can use. I am completely lost and unable to follow the conversation. Realizing I lack knowledge about magic, I quickly raise my hand and request that he explain in simpler terms. Cyril then begins to patiently explain that about 80% of people in this world possess a small amount of magic power and can use simple magic. He uses Cedric as an example, saying he can only use magic like a match flame, which shows his magical ability is quite limited like most people. People like me who originally had no magic power actually make up 10%. People like him, who are born with powerful magic power, are even rarer. He adds that mastering powerful magic requires long-term practice. After hearing this, I silently complain that magic seems less convenient and practical than tools. He continues to explain that people with magic power are usually blessed by the 4 elements. I raise a question saying that I received the blessing of the moon instead. He explains that this is a special case, quite rare even in recorded literature. He takes an unopened flower bud from the vase and has me extend my hand to try. He teaches me to imagine the feeling of releasing energy from my hand. Following his guidance, I concentrate and attempt to release the power within my body. I am amazed to discover that the flower bud in my hand actually begins to bloom slowly. He excitedly confirms that I can indeed use healing magic. I am overjoyed feeling this is just like a healing character in games. I also silently feel fortunate that this ability seems quite useful in real life. I begin to ask worriedly whether I can truly master this ability. Cyril immediately makes a solemn promise, telling me not to worry because he will guide me seriously. He will serve as my magic teacher. Cedric immediately states that he can teach at this level as well. Cyril counters that Cedric's greatest skill is swordsmanship, and bluntly says this would be too much of a stretch for him. Cedric insists on taking responsibility for caring for me, but is asked in return whether he would remain indifferent while watching me fall ill again. Cedric falls silent, unable to continue arguing. He then ushers the 3 of them out of the room, saying he must begin teaching immediately. After Cedric and the others leave the room, Cyril states that the teaching will begin now. I nervously agree, preparing to start learning magic control. But before formally beginning, he suddenly moves closer and lowers his voice. With a probing gaze fixed directly on my eyes, he asks who I really am. If Cyril learns I come from another world, I truly will not be able to survive here. Cyril states bluntly that the nature of my soul is different from the former Christina. My mind instantly goes blank. He explains that the original Christina's soul would not have magic power. Therefore, I must be someone else. I can deceive others, but I cannot deceive him. My heart skips a beat, not knowing what to do. Under his pressure and persuasion, I stammer through the story of my transmigration. I thought he would send me to a laboratory, but unexpectedly, after hearing everything, Cyril's eyes light up with excitement. He rubs his hands together and says, "This is so interesting." He says he originally thought it was just a soul swap, but it turns out to be a visitor from another world. I finally breathe a sigh of relief, but he changes the subject and says he wants to study my magic power in exchange. My heart skips a beat again. I bolt upright from the bed, fearfully wondering whether he really intends to use me as an experimental subject. Cyril smiles and says he will teach me to control my magic power so he can observe it more closely. He then begins asking how much magic power exists in my original world so he can better train me. I reply awkwardly that there is no magic in our world. After his surprise, Cyril claps his hands and announces that since there is no foundation, intensive training must begin. He says if I have another mana overflow incident, no one will be able to save me again. So, I must work. Hard to survive. Time flies by quickly. 1 month later, having just completed training, I collapse flat on the ground, my legs as weak as noodles. I silently complain that Cyril's intensive training is exhausting enough. Cyril walks over at this moment and says, I have made great progress, and asks if I can feel it. I quickly nod and say I can control my magic power now. Cyril nods and says, then there will be no more mana overflow incidents in the future. My eyes light up happily, thinking that after working so hard for so long, I have finally succeeded, but he says the training must continue until I become a royal court mage. I instantly deflate, feeling the road ahead is still long. He turns to Cyril and says coldly that since the training is finished, he should leave. Cyril says he will continue to come for spot checks. Watching the two of them bicker, I think to myself that magic is more troublesome than I imagined. Cedric exposes him, saying Cyril just wants to use spot checks as an excuse to wander around the estate. During this time, he has not only caused damage freely around the estate, but also devoured sweets excessively, and even slept directly in Cedric's bed, living quite carefree. Hearing this, Cyril quickly changes the subject and says, I have been super serious about training lately. I look at him and silently grumble that he is using me as a shield again. Cyril even takes my hand and says, staying with me for a lifetime would never be boring. Cedric glances between Cyril and me, the jealousy in his eyes quite obvious. Cyril suddenly suggests having me heal Cedric's hand injury as a test of results. I freeze for a moment. Cedric also freezes and asks how Cyril knows he has an injury on his hand. Cyril says he happened to see him get injured during sword practice. He also teases whether something or someone distracted him. Hearing this, Cedric's gaze turns toward me. This burning gaze makes my face feel a bit warm. Cyril ignores him and pulls his hand over, wanting me to cast healing magic on him. I feel a little nervous. I look at the bandage on Cedric's hand and quietly wonder if I can remove it to take a look. After receiving permission, I begin to carefully unwrap the bandage. After removing the bandage, I see the wound and cannot help but feel distressed. Cedric says, this minor injury is nothing. I shake my head, thinking he is definitely putting on a brave face. I concentrate and channel my magic power. Light instantly illuminates the surroundings. Cyril stares at the light and says, my magic power fluctuations are somewhat different, much more powerful than he imagined. He suddenly makes a sound of surprise and says Cedric's skin seems to have become smoother. He then quickly lifts Cedric's clothes and says he needs to examine this properly. He says I overdid it. I turn my head in confusion, not knowing what went wrong. Turning my head, I see Cedric bare-chested, his 8-pack abs quite striking. Cyril says his entire body is now tender and smooth. Cyril pats my head and says, it seems I still cannot control the intensity. Saying, this healing magic is more powerful than what the books describe. He turns his head and jokingly asks whether I might be a little monster to be this powerful. I scratch my head and smile somewhat bashfully. In another room, a young man stares down at the letter in his hands. The letter is from Crown Prince Philip, saying between the lines that Christina seems to have reflected and become well-behaved recently. He looks at the letter and snorts. He does not believe it at all. In his view, Christina could never possibly reflect on her actions. He decides he must personally visit the Duke's estate to see the situation. This time, he will definitely expose her false facade in person. One day, Cedric, Cyril, and I are eating cake in the garden. The warm sunshine is relaxing. Cyril's fork never stops as he devours cake with a satisfied expression. I watch him in amazement, thinking this person must be a sweets fanatic. Cyril looks up at me and urges me to eat some sweets too because sugar makes people happy. Looking at all this beauty, I think to myself that since Cyril arrived, the dining table has indeed become much livelier than before. At this moment, Cedric's gaze falls on me. He notices my little move of shifting bread to hide carrots. He tells me not to be picky and to eat them obediently. I reluctantly agree and begin eating the carrots. The carrots taste bland and mushy as I chew. I swallow hard with a frown. They taste absolutely terrible. Cedric watches me silently the whole time. Then he suddenly reaches out his fingertips, brushing the corner of my mouth to wipe away breadcrumbs. The gesture is gentle. My face flushes instantly. My hands freeze and my heartbeat inexplicably quickens. Cyril grins mischievously, his eyes darting between us as he asks what we are doing. I wave my hands frantically and explain anxiously that Cedric is just being kind and helping me. Cyril raises an eyebrow and says this is the first time he has seen this grumpy guy do something like this for anyone. Cedric presses his lips together and responds that it is not kindness but courtesy. However, this only earns him a meaningful look from Cyril. Watching the atmosphere between them stiffen, I quickly try to smooth things over, saying not to argue and to talk nicely, but Cyril directly asks Cedric whether he dislikes him getting close to Christina. Hearing this, I freeze in place, my mind racing in confusion about what he is saying. At this moment, Cyril adds that after all, he also likes Christina, thinking he must be joking. However, Cedric's expression darkens. He suddenly stands and tells us he has matters to attend to and must take his leave. Cyril watches his retreating figure and whispers to me that male jealousy is truly ugly. Cedric's steps pause and he glances back at him. Without saying anything, he leaves directly. After he walks away, I immediately complain to Cyril about why he said such things that make the atmosphere awkward. Afraid he will continue, I quickly add that Cedric was most annoyed by the original Christina's pursuit. What if things return to how they were before? Cyril responds nonchalantly that he is telling the truth, and even suggests I test Cedric's reaction. I quickly refuse, saying no. On the other side, Cedric soaks in the bath. His abdominal muscles appear and disappear through the steam, looking quite attractive. He asks himself repeatedly in distress whether he is jealous of Christina. Her blushing face suddenly flashes through his mind very clearly. Cedric snaps back to his senses. He raises his hand and slaps himself. Water splashes. He takes a deep breath and forces himself to calm down. He thinks that Christina is a criminal, and that getting close to her is only to find out the whereabouts of the grimoire. He only needs to report the information he obtains to Philip. He must not think about anything else. The next day is sunny. The sunshine feels warm. I am pulling weeds in the garden. Looking at the cleared ground, I feel delighted, thinking how wonderful it feels when effort brings results. Compared to working overtime until midnight in the past, this feels like living in paradise. I cannot help but sigh. Before there was no overtime pay and I was exhausted. Now I have wages and my efforts are recognized. Recalling how Cedric said to accept wages if I want to work, I feel warmth in my heart. He actually cares about me. At this moment, I think of something else. My hands suddenly stop. I recall how Cyril asked Cedric yesterday whether he dislikes him getting close to me. My face heats up again. I quickly dismiss these thoughts. No. Impossible. He is Cedric. How could he be jealous? Cyril must be overthinking. But the more I think, the more confused my thoughts become. I want to find Hannah, but she has gone somewhere. I shout at the sky, asking why there is no one around at this moment. How frustrating. My voice drifts through the garden. Suddenly, a whirlwind sweeps through, lifting the freshly pulled weeds. I quickly squint. It is somewhat blinding. The whirlwind stops. A small green and white cat appears before me with tiny wings on its back. I am very surprised. Is this a cat? How does it have wings? At this moment, the young man beside the small cat speaks. I recognize this young man. He is my adopted brother, Rufus von Luck. He was adopted by the mayor's couple from distant relatives. The mayor's planned that once the original Christina married into another family, he would inherit the estate and title. Therefore, his relationship with the original Christina was extremely poor. I steal a glance at him and discover that his hostile gaze pierces like needles. I am frightened and dare not move. He asks, sharply, whether I am scheming something. I fear he has misunderstood me and want to explain that the person inside this body has long since changed. But seeing his gaze shows no softening whatsoever, remaining sharp. I suddenly freeze. I think of my own brother. They should be close siblings. How did things become like this? My heart begins to ache. However, just as I am about to speak to him again, I see Hannah charging over with a long spear. The spear gleams coldly. I shrink back in alarm, my heartbeat racing. Hannah explains that Cyril's magic detected an intruder, so she came to protect me. She points the spear tip at Rufus, her grip steady as if rooted. I quickly rush over and hug, Hannah terrified she might actually attack. I frantically explain that this person is my brother and signal her to lower the spear quickly. Hearing the word brother, Rufus frowns and glances at me, his face showing undisguised disgust. Hannah tilts her head and examines Rufus, then looks at me, her face full of confusion. Cyril strolls over leisurely. He looks Rufus up and down, a smile on his lips, greeting him with some teasing. Rufus snorts coldly. His gaze instantly turns cold, his entire being radiating hostility. Cyril raises his eyebrows, his tone unable to hide his defiance. As he counters, the air between them feels frozen. The tension grows thicker. When I lower my head, I glimpse the small cat at my feet, fluffy and looking soft. I cannot help but reach out, wanting to touch that gentle fur full of anticipation. The small cat suddenly bristles and transforms into a fierce beast, baring its teeth and snarling at me. Frightened, I quickly jump into Hannah's arms, seeking protection. Rufus calls out once, and the small cat immediately settles down, returning to its docile appearance. Cyril comforts me and explains the reason. I clutch my pounding heart, my mind full of questions about spirits. Cyril seems to recall something and realizes, this is my first time seeing a spirit since I originally had no magic power and no qualification to become a spirit knight. His words truly hurt deeply. Seeing this, Cyril quickly changes the subject and begins patiently explaining spirit knights to me. He explains that among people without magic power, a small portion can see spirits and can form contracts with spirits to gain power. These are spirit knights. After hearing this, I suddenly understand. My eyes brighten and curiosity wells up inside me. I smile at Cyril, eyes crinkling, thanking him gratefully. He nods gently. Then he suddenly adds jokingly that spirit knights are just lower-tier substitutes for mages. This immediately angers Rufus. He frowns and counters, his tone agitated, clearly disagreeing with this statement. Cyril does not back down either, and argues back. The two argue more and more fiercely. Watching them locked in confrontation, I ask Hannah quietly, full of worry, her eyes showing she is accustomed to it. While arguing, Cyril suddenly conjures a magic orb, his expression serious as if about to attack. Rufus does not hesitate either and summons the small cat, preparing for battle. I stomp my feet anxiously, my tone full of panic, afraid they will destroy the estate. I quickly rush between the two and block them, continuously shouting to stop my voice, trembling slightly. Cyril looks at me, shrugs, and dismisses the magic orb without continuing the fight, his tone full of regret. The mockery in his eyes like shards of ice. He says I am pretending to be good. He will expose me soon and will never forgive what happened before. Hearing this, my heart sinks. As soon as he finishes speaking, a magic circle appears beneath his feet and takes him away. I want to call out to him, but he leaves too quickly. I can only stand there stunned. Cyril moves to my side, looking at me and asking whether I'm very interested in Rufus. I nod, my eyes full of guilt, wanting to apologize for my actions. Cyril's eyes light up, saying he will help create an opportunity for reconciliation. Hearing this, my heart fills with anticipation along with some unease until I see the scene before me. I am completely stunned. Cyril smiles and points ahead, saying, "This is a duel tournament between mages and spirit knights." The arena is filled with cheering from the audience. Shouts of magic is strongest make my ears ring. On the other side, shouts of spirits are strongest are equally loud. The entire arena buzzes with excitement. I shrink back at this spectacle. This is too exaggerated, many times more intense than I imagined. Cyril notices my nervousness and reassures me, telling me not to be afraid. He explains, "This is a traditional competition between mages and spirit knights, and the atmosphere is naturally like this. Permitted by national law." Cyril nods in agreement with Hannah and suddenly says he has an idea. He says he can first beat Rufus Black and Blue in the arena, then have me heal him with magic. This way, Rufus and I can use the opportunity to reconcile. I am stunned, speechless, my mind full of questions about what kind of reconciliation this is. Cyril ignores my reaction and suddenly looks back at Cedric in the distance. His gaze carries some teasing. He asks curiously why Cedric came here. Cedric answers that he came to monitor me. Hearing this, I follow Cyril's gaze and discover Cedric is sitting beside me, his expression calm and undisturbed. As I sit down, I think he probably believes that with Rufus here, I might reveal some information. While thinking this, I suddenly notice Cedric's gaze falling on me. I instinctively look up and meet his eyes directly. Cedric acts as if burned and quickly turns his head to look elsewhere. Watching him avoid my gaze, I wonder whether he is still upset about Rufus intruding into the estate. After hesitating for a while, I still cannot help wanting to ask, clearly afraid he is truly angry. Cedric gently shakes his head and says he does not particularly mind this matter. He also says that a brother visiting his sister is very normal and nothing to be angry about. He only hopes that next time Rufus comes, he can give advance notice, so he can be properly received. My heart warms. I smile and thank him for being so reasonable. Cedric looks at my smile, his cheeks burning, his gaze somewhat dazed, as if mesmerized. His gaze remains fixed on my face. I feel somewhat strange being stared at and wonder what he is looking at. Just then, Cyril suddenly calls out to me saying Rufus will compete next and tells me to hurry and watch. I look in the direction he indicates and see Rufus's back. He stands in the center of the arena, posture upright, looking quite imposing. At this moment, Cyril shouts toward Rufus, telling him not to lose to anyone else before losing to him. Hearing this, Rufus immediately turns back and glares at Cyril. His eyes are full of defiance. Cedric looks at Cyril, puzzled about why he is not preparing for the match, wondering why he keeps staying in the audience seats. Cyril answers that he is the previous tournament champion, so he does not need to participate in the preliminaries and can enter directly in the finals. Saying this, he takes the opportunity to move closer to me and says choosing him as a partner is absolutely worth the value. He also adds that Rufus is a highly favored popular contestant among Spirit Knights, telling me not to worry too much about his match, because his abilities are strong. Hearing this, I feel a bit of pride since he is my brother after all. But thinking about Rufus's attitude toward me, I cannot help feeling somewhat dejected. Soon, Rufus's opponent enters the arena. He is a muscular, bald man who assumes a fierce posture and clenches his fist toward Rufus in intimidation. Rufus remains calm, looking at the bald man's muscles with an expression of indifference. The bald man is provoked by Rufus's attitude and swings a punch at him with full force. The fist moves quickly and is about to make contact with Rufus's body. But before the bald man's fist reaches Rufus, green vines suddenly emerge from beneath the bald man's feet, instantly wrapping around his limbs and rendering him immobile. Rufus manipulates the vines and says calmly that these muscles are merely decorative. As he speaks, he controls the vines to lift the bald man, then casually tosses him outside the arena. The bald man crashes heavily outside the arena, unable to move his limbs. He successfully advances to the finals. The audience erupts in cheers. I also cheer excitedly along with them. I am genuinely happy for Rufus, but he turns back and glares at me coldly. That icy gaze instantly dampens my spirits and all the excitement disappears. Cyril begins comforting me again, then changes the subject and says he will compete in the next match and wants a reward if he wins. Before he finishes speaking, Cedric draws his sword and points the blade at Cyril, interrupting him. Cedric looks at me with a serious tone, telling me not to listen to Cyril. Cyril persists, saying he wants a reward to boost his motivation. Before I can react, Cyril declares on his own that I have already agreed. This angers Cedric so much that he swings his sword at Cyril, but Cyril nimbly dodges. Cyril says with a laugh that it is settled and uses magic to fly himself to the arena, wanting to ask what the reward actually is, but he flies too fast and does not hear me. I stand in place, my mind full of confusion, not knowing what reward he wants. I can only silently pray that Rufus will win. Otherwise, Cyril will definitely bring up the reward. The referee stands at the center of the arena, excitedly announcing that the finals have finally begun. He introduces Cyril, who earned his noble title through magical power and perseverance, and the audience instantly erupts in thunderous cheers. He then mentions that Rufus is a Spirit Knight prodigy, and another wave of cheers immediately follows. I discover with surprise that both contestants enjoy tremendous popularity among the audience. Hannah responds beside me, specifically reminding me that the one sitting behind us is more beloved by the young ladies. Hearing this, I turn back to look at Cedric. He is focused intently on reviewing the documents in his hands. Sunlight falls upon his handsome profile, outlining a heart-stirring silhouette. I have to admit, he truly possesses a unique charm that makes it impossible to look away. Hannah gently taps my arm, signaling me not to ignore her presence. She confidently declares that she too is quite a popular and important figure. I think she is joking since Hannah usually appears quite lazy and ordinary. Looking at her unusually serious expression, I cannot help but fall into confusion and contemplation. Cedric speaks up at the right moment to remind us that the match is about to officially begin. We immediately direct our full attention to the intense and thrilling competition. I silently pray that Rufus will achieve victory in this duel. Recalling Cyril's joking remarks before the match about the victory reward makes me feel uneasy. Finally, the battle between them begins. The audience seats periodically erupt with gasps of amazement, cheering for the spectacular match. The two contestants on the field are engaged in a dazzling, magical duel. Rufus summons vines while taunting Cyril, asking if this is all the strength he has. Cyril calmly gathers magical energy and responds asking how that could possibly be all. The magical energy quickly transforms into a powerful whirlwind. It attacks in Rufus's direction, and Cyril does not forget to remind him that he will suffer severe damage if he fails to defend. Rufus barely dodges the fierce assault. He begins to struggle. This forms a stark contrast with Cyril, who remains effortlessly composed throughout. I discover with shock that the strength Cyril displays far exceeds expectations. At this moment, Cedric suddenly watches a certain direction with a tense expression. A massive boulder thrown by magic hurtles rapidly toward the spectator seats. Cedric swiftly and firmly pulls me into his solid embrace for protection. At the same time, he agilely moves us away from danger. In his warm embrace, I have not yet realized the danger that occurred. When he releases his arms, I finally see clearly the boulder that just flew past. Shaken by the close call, I hastily express my sincere gratitude to him. Cedric then extends his hand toward me. He suggests that I should not leave his side for the time being. For some reason, my heartbeat begins to accelerate and I agree without thinking. I then obediently place my hand gently in his palm. On the arena, Rufus continues struggling to dodge the continuous attacks. Cyril wields the magical whirlwind to launch an even more ferocious offensive. This leaves Rufus somewhat unable to withstand the assault. Rufus is about to argue that spirit knights are stronger than mages. When Cyril cuts him off, this cold response makes the anger in his chest burn even more intensely. His thoughts uncontrollably drift back to distant childhood memories. In his memory, he desperately chased after classmates trying to retrieve his beloved book. That group mocked him, saying someone without magical power like him did not deserve it. They maliciously threw the grimoire to the top of a high tree branch. Young Rufus stood under the tree anxiously on tiptoe but could not reach it. No matter how hard he tried, he could only watch his beloved book helplessly, his heart full of bitter pain. He recalls that the original Christina had once mockingly advised him not to waste his efforts. Rufus felt even more bitter inside. Understanding the reality, yet still feeling unwilling to accept it. After all, he had witnessed others effortlessly conjuring water with magic. At that time, he was filled with envy. He truly longed to personally experience the wonderful sensation of using magic. At that moment, a mysterious energy fluctuation suddenly rippled through the air. It was young Cyril using magic to easily retrieve the book from the high branch. Rufus widened his eyes as he received the grimoire. He exclaimed in amazement. To master magic so skillfully at such a young age was incredible, and Rufus hastily expressed his gratitude. Cyril proudly introduced himself, explaining that he entered this noble academy through exceptional talent. He noticed the grimoire and curiously asked Rufus about the situation. He then looked Rufus up and down. He then bluntly pointed out the fact that Rufus completely lacked magical talent. This assessment instantly plunged Rufus into deep disappointment and dejection. Cyril stated frankly that even Uli would be useless, and that he should put his energy elsewhere, then turned and left the scene. This left Rufus standing there stunned, his entire body frozen as if under a paralysis spell. Unable to understand why those who could use magic were all so arrogant. As he wept, a faint cry caught his attention, and Rufus looked in the direction of the sound. He discovered the sound came from a nearby large tree, and he hesitantly reached out to touch it. The tree suddenly burst forth with brilliant light. Then a mysterious cat spirit appeared before his eyes. Surprisingly, Rufus could actually understand the cat's language. The little cat softly offered to help, proactively proposing to form an eternal contract with him. Rufus felt confused, yet faintly hopeful about the changes that might occur in the future. He involuntarily recalled all the unfair treatment he had experienced before. He made up his mind to establish a contract with this mysterious being, longing to prove through this power that he was not worthless. So this time he absolutely cannot lose. He calls out the little cat's name, Mimi. He signals that now is the time to show the world their true power. The two gradually draw closer to each other and begin the magical fusion process. The blinding light forces me to close my eyes to avoid the intense brightness. When I open my eyes again, I discover with surprise that Rufus has completed his transformation. This shocks even Cedric. Seeing this, I curiously ask whether this transformation signifies tremendous power. Cedric indicates this is also his first time witnessing it, marveling that the legendary spirit sorcerer truly exists in this world. Hearing this, I cannot help but feel genuinely delighted by the talent Rufus has displayed. On the arena, Cyril calmly points out that merely changing appearance is meaningless. Rufus firmly states that he will show his opponent true strength. He then swiftly launches a powerful and fierce attack towards Cyril. Cyril quickly sidesteps, dodging the attack with fluid and elegant movements. His face involuntarily reveals an expression of incredulous surprise. That fierce attack leaves a shocking crater in the ground. Cyril watches this astounding destructive power with disbelief. Rufus explains that this is a completely new combat method. After fusing with a spirit, Rufus then continuously launches fierce magical attacks. Cyril can only keep dodging the energy orbs. Rufus questions whether constantly evading counts as the proper response. Cyril helplessly states that he really does not wish to be flattened by these energy orbs. Rufus vows that starting today, he will completely overturn the established notion that spirit knights are weaker than mages. He gathers his strongest energy to prepare the decisive strike. Cyril simultaneously begins gathering his own magical energy orb. The two powerful forces collide intensely in the air, bursting with light. I am deeply captivated by this spectacular duel. At this critical moment, I suddenly notice something abnormal. Rufus's aura has somehow turned black. At this moment, Rufus on the arena remains completely unaware. He keeps repeating in his mind that he will win, that he clearly has the upper hand now. Cyril's movements controlling magic gradually become strained. A wave of secret satisfaction surges within Rufus. Finally, he can show these arrogant people what he is capable of. Suddenly, a wave of discomfort strikes, and Rufus painfully furrows his brow. His fusion with Mimi is then forcibly interrupted, and they are compelled to separate. Rufus falls heavily to the ground. An ominous premonition wells up in his heart. He is done! Cyril's magical whirlwind roars toward him. Fortunately, it grazes past him and strikes to the side. The match ends, and Cyril walks toward him, saying that closing your eyes during a match will not do. He wears a gentle and concerned smile. This completely unexpected attitude surprises Rufus greatly. The next second, he clearly realizes that he has completely lost. Rufus slowly stands up and admits defeat in a low voice. He then turns without looking back and hastily leaves the competition grounds. No matter how Cyril calls out behind him, he never turns around. I watch his retreating figure full of worry yet uncertain what to do. Outside the competition grounds, Rufus walks alone on a quiet forest path. Mimi follows, weakly fluttering her wings, her condition clearly poor. Rufus blames himself sorrowfully to Mimi, asking why. They were so close to winning. Why did this happen? As his words fall, Rufus hears a thud. Mimi suddenly falls helplessly from the air to the ground. Rufus's heart clenches sharply, and he rushes quickly toward Mimi. He crouches down to examine her carefully and discovers that Mimi's condition has deteriorated drastically. At this moment, hurried footsteps behind him catch his attention. He turns back to see me rushing hurriedly toward them. Seeing me approach, Rufus asks in a cold tone if I need something. I answer softly that he looked troubled, so I came to check on him. Rufus says coldly that how he is doing has nothing to do with me mocking, that I surely came to ridicule him for losing. His cold words instantly make me feel irritated. Just as I am about to retort, my gaze suddenly notices the weakened Mimi on the ground. I immediately crouch down and anxiously ask what happened to her. Rufus still stubbornly says, "This is none of my business." His tone is firm as he tells me not to meddle. I pick up Mimi and raise my voice, telling him to stop. Mimi's condition is already this terrible. Mimi trembles slightly in my arms. Her condition worse than before. Seeing this, Rufus no longer argues. His expression gradually darkens. After a moment, he says in a low voice that this is spirit fever. I pause, confused, and repeat the term spirit fever. Rufus explains that spirits only contract this when they overexert their power, which is extremely rare. He pauses, his voice dropping lower as he says that if this continues, the spirit will disappear. I am utterly shocked, and my arms holding Mimi tighten unconsciously as I ask how the situation could become like this. I urge that we must quickly find a solution, but Rufus still refuses my help, saying he will handle it himself. I press further, asking if he has a solution. Rufus is silent for a moment, then says that the cure for spirit fever remains unknown. My heart sinks. Does this mean we can only watch her die? Rufus answers angrily that this is all they can do now. I fall into heavy silence. I see Rufus say despairingly that he wants to properly accompany Mimi through her final moments. Looking at Mimi gradually weakening in my arms, I refuse to simply stand by and do nothing, resolving to try using the white magic I recently learned. Under Rufus's focused and worried gaze, I concentrate intently and begin casting healing magic. I pray earnestly in my heart that this treatment will succeed. Rufus watches the scene before him with incredulous surprise. He cannot understand at all why I, who never learned magic, can do this. But at this moment, I have no time whatsoever to answer his questions because I must use all my strength to save the weakened Mimi. At this time, Cedric's steady voice sounds at the right moment to explain. This is a special type of white magic used specifically for healing. Hannah also appears and adds that this is a new skill I recently learned. Before Rufus can react, Cyril appears beside him and says to confidently leave Mimi in my care because they all trust my healing abilities without reservation. With this trust, I continue casting the spell and warm light envelops Mimi. Her weakened condition gradually begins to improve under the magic's effect. Mimi's eyes regain their luster, and she gradually recovers her vitality. She immediately leaps up and embraces Rufus in an emotional reunion. Unwilling to let go, he apologizes, saying it was all his fault that she fell into such dire straits. Mimi shakes her head, indicating she does not blame him, and their emotions sincerely intertwine. I say with relief that it is wonderful she has recovered her spirits. Feeling a weight lift from my heart, Rufus turns toward me and bows, thanking me for my timely assistance. He admits that he may have misunderstood me all along and expresses sincere gratitude. I hastily say that I only did what should be done and that excessive courtesy is unnecessary. I hope to take this opportunity to resolve the past misunderstandings between us. Unexpectedly, Rufus still refuses me outright. This instantly makes me feel an indescribable sense of defeat. However, he then says somewhat bashfully in a low voice that he can acknowledge me as his sister. This unexpected acknowledgement fills my heart with joy after hearing it. He has finally acknowledged me. I have finally succeeded. It truly fills me with joy. At this moment, Cyril approaches Rufus, and Rufus assumes he will mock him. However, Cyril extends his hand, expressing admiration for his spirit arts and stating that the match was spectacular. He recalls that when they first met, he suggested that Rufus focus his efforts elsewhere, and he praises him for having indeed done very well. Rufus did not expect that he would also remember their childhood encounter. Seeing this, Cyril hastily boasts that he is a genius, so of course he remembers. After hearing this, Rufus finally feels at peace, realizing he has finally been recognized. He shilly grasps Cyril's hand in return, and the atmosphere begins to ease. However, Cyril then states that magic is indeed stronger than spirit arts, sparking another argument. I watch them argue helplessly, feeling utterly exasperated. Meanwhile, none of us notice that someone is hiding behind a tree, eavesdropping on our conversation. On the other side, in the royal palace, Crown Prince Philip is alone in his study, focused intently on handling his work. At this time, Antonio reports from outside the door that a visitor has arrived. And, after Philip inquires, he allows the visitor to enter. The visitor is Priscilla, who enters and greets Philip with elegant propriety. Philip looks at the visitor and thinks that he has not seen her for quite some time since that falling incident. Philip inquires about her purpose for coming here. Priscilla states that she wishes to apologize to Christina and explain the circumstances. Philip is surprised and asks why, believing she has nothing to apologize for. Priscilla explains that she was not harmed at the time and feels the matter was blown out of proportion. Moreover, she did not confirm whether Christina truly intended to push her at the time. She merely felt it might happen. Philip states that Christina was actually injured in the fall, and her presence at the scene serves as evidence. He further explains that although Christina suffered severe injuries, she can now walk and her spirits are quite good, though she seems like a completely different person. However, Priscilla still insists, leaning closer and requesting an opportunity to apologize. Philip instinctively raises his hand, saying that unmarried men and women should maintain distance, reminding her to observe propriety. Priscilla hastily steps back and apologizes, saying she was careless due to being accustomed to commoner life. Indeed, Priscilla was originally a commoner. She was someone Philip met by chance while traveling incognito. However, this angered his then-fiancée, Christina. Although Philip explained multiple times that he harbored no special feelings for Priscilla, he then considers the apology opportunity. Perhaps this meeting could help find clues about the missing grimoire. He believes that given Christina's impulsive nature, she might very well let something slip. After careful consideration, Philip finally agrees to arrange this meeting. He deliberately chooses a relatively appropriate location for the meeting. Cedric confirms that this is correct and that Philip has issued instructions. Furthermore, he requires that I must attend the party. Philip, I sigh inwardly, truly not wanting to be involved with him. I imagine he likely feels the same way, with both of us reluctant to have much contact. I am well aware that I have no right to refuse such a request. It appears this palace party is unavoidable. Cyril picks up a piece of cake and comforts me, telling me to relax and saying he will bring Rufus along that day. Rufus looks surprised, clearly unaware that he must also attend. Cyril deliberately teases Rufus, saying he is actually going because he worries about me. Rufus's ears turn slightly red and he stubbornly says he is not worried, merely going to supervise me. Cyril laughs and exposes that his implication is precisely to accompany me, making Rufus even more embarrassed. I watch from the side, smiling and remarking how good their relationship is. Suddenly, I cannot help but feel curious. I ask Rufus what the reason was for him disliking me initially. From my memories, I was happy every day when Rufus first arrived. Yet at some point, his gaze toward me gradually filled with hostility. I must understand that my memories are those of the original Christina, which means that what she does not remember, I cannot possibly remember either. Rufus stares at me, his tone full of disbelief, asking how I dare to have forgotten. He says I did terrible things to him, but I have no recollection whatsoever. I hastily press him to explain what he means. Rufus says I put insect eggs in his desk along with slimy substances. Insect eggs? My face is full of shock, with absolutely no memory of this in my mind. Rufus continues, adding that I always enjoyed using such things to frighten him and torment him. He shudders, recalling it now, saying those wriggling things were disgusting. After hearing this, I am even more astonished, unable to comprehend that the original would do such things. I sigh, thinking that the original's way of interacting with people truly required significant improvement. Soon the day of the party arrives. The royal palace is extraordinarily lively, with people engaged in conversation and laughter. Cedric and I attend in formal attire. And seeing such a magnificent scene for the first time, I cannot help but marvel. Seeing this, Cedric asks softly whether I am truly that surprised. I inwardly cry out in alarm, knowing I must not let him detect any flaws. At this time, Cyril pats my shoulder, telling me to relax while he appears completely at ease. Rufus cannot help but criticize Cyril from the side, saying he is too disrespectful toward me. Cyril deliberately hugs me tighter, provoking Rufus to tell me to object. I do not know what to say since I have grown accustomed to this. While Cedric watches us quietly from the side, he is likely still wondering whether I will, because of Priscilla, reveal my villainous nature. We converse and interact naturally at the lively party. My gaze suddenly catches a familiar figure. It is Priscilla, the young lady who was allegedly pushed down the stairs by me. Priscilla quickly notices my gaze. She immediately approaches Bose respectfully and states that she wishes to apologize to me. She says that because of her, I have been treated like a criminal and she feels deeply troubled by this. I hastily tell her not to do this, saying I was not imprisoned and she need not apologize. Priscilla says that she became too close to Philip, so it is natural that I would be unhappy. Hearing this, I realize there was indeed such a matter, though it was all the original who did those things. She then says she is sorry for driving me to such extremes. I hastily wave my hands, saying I was also at fault and that I indeed caused her trouble. Priscilla lifts her tear-filled eyes toward me. She timidly inquires whether I am willing to forgive her previous transgressions. I hastily state that this hardly requires forgiveness, and tell her not to concern herself. After hearing this, Priscilla shows a delighted expression and says she hopes we can get along well in the future. This sudden goodwill surprises me somewhat. However, I quickly display a friendly smile, a smile, and gladly accept her proposal. At this time, a voice calling for Priscilla comes from the distance. After bidding me farewell, she turns and departs with a smile. After Priscilla leaves, I still wave goodbye to her with lingering reluctance. I think to myself that Priscilla is truly a very nice person. I cannot help but tell Cyril and the others how likable Priscilla is. However, Cyril says he does not like her and finds her somewhat affected, while Rufus agrees, saying such people appear inconsistent between surface and substance. I feel somewhat confused by their vastly different assessment. I turn and inquire about Cedric's true perspective on this matter. This statement makes my eyes light up instantly. I secretly wonder whether he is suggesting that I should become an independent woman. At this moment on the balcony, Philip quietly observes our interaction. His gaze is full of doubt, as he likely did not expect that I would not create difficulties for Priscilla. Philip silently contemplates this astonishing change. Could the Christina before him truly be completely different from before? Ultimately, he decides to personally test my true attitude. As we engage in pleasant conversation, I suddenly hear someone calling. I turn to see Philip standing not far away. He approaches slowly and invites me to speak privately with a smile. Philip smiles on the surface, but inwardly he intends to personally inquire about the grimoire's whereabouts. I recognize him immediately as my former fiancé. I begin to feel tense. I instinctively hide behind Cedric. I ask softly what matter he wishes to discuss with me. My entire body tenses into a state of alert, not daring to relax for a moment. Seeing this, Philip breaks the silence first, asking whether I am living well with Cedric. I hastily state that I am happy every day, my heart filled with a solid sense of contentment. As these words emerge, the corners of Cedric's mouth quietly curve upward. At this time, Cyril suddenly approaches and interjects, telling me to hide behind him and that he will protect me with magic. Rufus immediately objects, pushing him aside and retorting that his spirit arts are stronger than magic. Philip stares at our interaction and he is stunned. His eyes are filled with confusion about why everyone is protecting her, as Christina should be universally disliked. Philip's thoughts drift back to the past. At that time, he was still handling official documents in his study. The original Christina rudely barged in without knocking. This startled him so much that the pen in his hand paused. Christina, regardless of whether he was busy, forcefully demanded that he set aside official duties to accompany her in selecting dresses. Philip demurred, saying he was handling important matters, and she immediately threw a tantrum. She even complained that if Cedric were her fiancé instead, he would certainly be more considerate than Philip. Philip retorted that Cedric was even more rigid. Christina replied that she preferred it that way. She even stated bluntly that the best thing about Cedric was his handsome face. After saying this, she snatched Philip's documents. She even looked down at him condescendingly and asked whether he wanted to kneel down to pick up the documents. After saying this, she left with a laugh without looking back. Philip was extremely angry, and at that time he had only one thought, which was that he must dissolve the engagement with this woman. Having finished recalling, Philip continues to look at me. He seems to be wondering whether I am pretending. He then adjusts his tone and asks whether I find today's party enjoyable. Considering that I was previously most enamored with such occasions, I answered truthfully that I do not enjoy it, saying that cleaning is far more interesting than parties. Thinking to myself that after all, I was accustomed to a simple life as a former corporate worker. Philip is utterly shocked by the answer, clearly disbelieving that I could change this much. He changes the subject, mentioning that a theatrical performance I previously enjoyed is soon to be staged, asking whether I would like to attend with him. I hastily shake my head in refusal, saying there is still work to be done at the ducal estate. Philip sigh inwardly, wondering why he cannot seem to converse properly with me. Seeing that gentle approaches are ineffective, his expression darkens, his tone suddenly becomes sharp, as he reminds me that I am currently under surveillance, and that if I do not comply, I will be executed when necessary. Hearing these words, I instantly panic, my hands and feet turning cold. Seeing my reaction, a flash of satisfaction crosses Philip's eyes, thinking that this approach is indeed effective. He likely believes that continuing this way will allow him to extract the grimoire's location. Meanwhile, I fear inwardly whether I will be discovered as not being the real Christina. I force myself to remain composed and tell Philip that I am not concealing anything. Philip scoffs coldly, saying that I have always been skilled at lying without showing any emotion. My heart instantly collapses, blaming the original's past horrible deeds that leave me unable to refute. Just as I am about to break down, Cedric suddenly steps in front of me. I look up to discover that Cyril and Rufus have also positioned themselves before me, protecting me even more thoroughly. Cyril states that Philip's treatment of a lady is highly improper. Rufus adds his support, saying that suspecting me constitutes an insult to the Von Luck family. Hearing this, my throat tightens and my eyes grow warm. Philip raises an eyebrow and asks whether they intend to become my guardian knights. He turns to look at Cedric and asks whether he thinks the same. Cedric remains silent for several seconds. He then states seriously that he has a duty to ensure my safety. These words surge through my heart like a warm current. I instantly feel considerably more secure. Philip and Cedric exchange gazes for several seconds. The atmosphere becomes somewhat serious. Watching this scene unfold, he opens his mouth but ultimately only sighs helplessly. And this puts his mind at ease. He then apologizes for his recent behavior. He turns and departs, and I watch his gradually receding figure. Only then do I dare to release my clenched hands and breathe a sigh of relief. Cyril reaches out to pat my head and comforts me, saying he can go to Philip's room and unleash a tornado to avenge what just occurred. Rufus echoes this sentiment, saying he will make Philip's room overgrown with weeds, and I hastily stop them both. Cedric says nothing, merely observing us silently. When evening arrives, Philip stands before the floor-to-ceiling window. He asks Cedric what he meant by contradicting him in that manner. Cedric stands before him, remaining silent without responding. After a considerable pause, Philip continues, stating that Cedric cannot possibly misunderstand his intentions. So why did he interfere? Cedric does not respond, but instead asks Philip whether Christina is truly connected to the grimoire. Philip did not anticipate this question, and he even inquires whether Cedric has developed emotional attachment to Christina. Cedric still does not respond, merely lowering his eyes in silence. Philip continues, stating that based on the current situation, Christina is absolutely implicated. He reminds Cedric to remain clear-headed as this matter concerns the very survival of the nation. Ultimately, Cedric responds that he understands. At the ducal estate, Cedric walks alone in the corridor, his silhouette conveying deep contemplation. He continues pondering Philip's statement about whether he has developed emotional attachment to Christina. He wonders inwardly whether he has truly developed such feelings for Christina. He knows full well how dangerous the grimoire is, yet he consistently feels that Christina is not acting. As he contemplates deeply, I run toward him with a smile. I hold up the cookies I just made and invite him with a smile to taste them together. Upon hearing this, Cedric's gaze softens. The corners of his mouth curve into a gentle arc, and he accepts my invitation. We then walk forward side by side, preparing to find a comfortable place to enjoy the cookies together. I mutter inwardly that the tension from the party has not yet dissipated, as the oppressive aura surrounding him always causes unease. Halfway through sweeping, I notice the servants gathered around a figure. It is Priscilla speaking with the butler about something. She notices me at this moment. She immediately walks briskly toward me. She looks at me and says she has finally found someone reasonable to speak with, though I remain unaware of the situation. She explains that she wishes to consult with Cedric about a matter. However, the butler refused her entry to the study on the grounds that Cedric had not given prior notice. She grasps my hand and implores me. She states that since I am close to Cedric, I can surely help guide her. I stand frozen, thinking to myself whether we are indeed considered close in others' eyes. However, upon reflection, although I was initially quite afraid of him, his gaze toward me has indeed softened considerably recently. Thinking about this makes me feel bashful. I never realized that Cedric and I seem close to others. While I'm lost in thought, the butler suddenly calls my name, startling me. He asks if I know this lady. I quickly explain that she's Priscilla, the adopted daughter of Baronel's family. Priscilla immediately curtsies. The butler frowns, thinking for a moment, and decides she doesn't seem to be lying. He says he can go inform Cedric first. Priscilla becomes overjoyed upon hearing this and eagerly asks if she can enter now, asking me to show her the way since Cedric and I are so close. Hearing this, my cheeks burn as I wonder to myself, do we really seem that close? Suddenly, snapping back to reality, I realize this isn't right. I can't let her lead me around so easily, so I state that I can't take it upon myself to bring her to see Cedric. Just as I finish speaking, the butler returns, saying he's received the master's permission and can take her there. The situation becomes awkward, so I go with the flow and say I'll show the way. Priscilla quickly thanks me. At this moment, Cedric is in his study. He's still thinking about Philip's words. He gazes out the window and murmurs softly that he's actually very clear-headed right now. At this moment, someone knocks on the study door. Cedric responds, allowing them to enter. I push open the door and say I've brought Miss Priscilla. He walks toward us, saying, "The butler has already informed him about this." At this moment, Priscilla looks at Cedric with unusual intensity, as if with a special kind of enthusiasm, saying she won't trouble me further and asking me to leave first. I freeze for a moment and say I'll take my leave. Then, as I exit the study and gently close the door, I lean against it, pondering. Was I just kicked out? I console myself, thinking they must have something to discuss privately, which is why they asked me to leave. The more I think about it, the more curious I become. What do they need to talk about alone? Priscilla is already popular with men. A thought suddenly pops into my head. Could it be that Cedric likes her too? After all, Priscilla is close to the crown prince. So she must know Cedric as well. Thinking this, my heart feels stuffed with cotton. Even breathing feels heavy. I touch my chest, wondering why I feel this suffocating sensation. I've never felt this way before. Inside the study, Priscilla is enthusiastically making small talk with Cedric. While talking, she even reaches out and places her hand on his arm. Priscilla hastily apologizes, saying she just felt they were too distant and wanted to get closer. Cedric directly interrupts her, saying he doesn't want to be that close. Priscilla says aggrievedly that they're both Philip's friends and shouldn't be so distant. Hearing this, Cedric frowns, feeling she hasn't recognized her position, so he seriously reminds Priscilla to understand her status and boundaries. Priscilla quickly says she came to apologize to him, her voice trembling. Cedric raises an eyebrow and asks why she needs to apologize. Priscilla lowers her head and says self-reproachfully that it's because of her that he has to take care of Christina. She even suggests letting Christina return to her own home, saying she no longer minds what happened before. Hearing this, Cedric's expression immediately changes. He responds coldly that taking care of Christina isn't just because of her. It's a royal decree, not her decision to make. Priscilla smiles and refuts, saying she's the victim and the king will listen to her. Cedric finally loses patience and tells her to go back. Cedric emphasizes again. I'm telling you to leave. Cedric tells Priscilla to either leave on her own or be dragged out. He reminds her not to assume every man will be pleasant to her. This is far too presumptuous. He states bluntly that he has no interest in her whatsoever. He warns her not to pretend they're familiar and get close. She'd better restrain such behavior in the future. Finally, he issues the order to leave, asking if he really needs to call someone to drag her out. Priscilla's face fills with shame, and she doesn't argue further. At this moment, I'm sweeping the courtyard with a broom, tears streaming down her face, looking deeply wronged. Before I can react, she accuses me of being terrible. Then she says loudly that I should set Cedric free. I'm completely bewildered, unable to make sense of this. She cries, explaining that Cedric should fulfill his knightly duties, not waste his talent monitoring me. She says he takes pride in being a knight loyal to the royal family and is a talented individual recognized by all. Yet now he's trapped in this estate, watching over me, unable to perform his original guard and combat duties. She cries, pushing all the blame onto me, insisting firmly that I've harmed Cedric. This causes deep guilt to rise within me. I've indeed heard that Cedric is a trusted and capable knight at the royal palace. His abilities are highly recognized by the royal family. Now, because of the royal decree to monitor me, even his core responsibilities are being delayed. I feel extremely guilty, but he's acting under royal orders. Defying them would surely bring severe consequences. Priscilla immediately responds, saying that if I just leave, he can regain his freedom. She smiles and says that once I'm gone, Cedric won't have to keep taking care of me. I say worriedly that if I leave without permission, he'll be held accountable by the royal family. I can't do that. She tells me not to worry, saying, as long as people think I wanted to leave on my own, it'll be fine. After all, everyone knows my former temperament. They'll only sympathize with Cedric. I think to myself that she's right. The former Christina was indeed capable of doing any outrageous thing. She continues, saying she'll help testify that she saw me leave. But I was too emotionally unstable for her to stop. There won't be any problems. I remain silent, my heart full of conflict and unease. Finally, I can't help but ask if Cedric has said anything about me. Priscilla pretends to think, then she smirks secretly. She lies to me saying Cedric finds me troublesome, but has no choice because of the royal decree. My heart sinks hearing this, so I really do trouble him that much. After saying all this, Priscilla rummages through her bag for something. Then she hands me a package she'd prepared in advance. She says wearing regular clothes would make escape easy to spot, disguising as a commoner, safer, and she's even included travel money. I take it and softly say thank you. My heart filled with complex and heavy emotions. Seeing me so compliant, she finally becomes happy. She smiles and says, "This is better for everyone." I respond numbly, "Right." When night falls, the Duke's estate is quiet. I stand at the window of my room. Looking back at this room I've lived in for a while, my heart fills with reluctance. At first, I thought this place was too luxurious and uncomfortable. But after living here, I discovered how comfortable it truly is. Not just this room. The entire estate makes me feel safe and warm. But it's over now. I throw out the rope I made earlier from bedsheets through the window. After confirming the length is sufficient, I take a deep breath and prepare to climb. I step gently onto the soft grass. I look up at my room window. I whisper, "Goodbye." Just as I turn to leave, I hear a sound and my heart instantly tightens. It turns out to be Cyril's whirlwind flying toward me. Flustered and unable to hide in time. Before I can take 2 steps, Hannah and the butler surround me with others. I look at the people around me thinking I'm really done for now. There's no way to escape now, is there? At this moment, Hannah sighs softly. She says they were prepared for my escape plan. All along, she can't help but comment that I'm a bit foolish. These blunt words make me feel awkward instantly. At this moment, steady footsteps suddenly sound from behind. I instinctively turn toward the sound. I discover it's Cedric walking toward me. He gently says he wants to hear my explanation first. I panic instantly, not knowing how to explain. So we come to the reception room. Cedric thoughtfully pours tea for me. I sit across from him, thinking to myself how awkward this is. I have no idea what to say. The silence continues for quite a while. Cedric breaks the silence first, asking why I'm not drinking the tea. I quickly respond, "I'll drink it." Then I take a sip. The tea's fragrance spreads in my mouth. It's delicious, though if I weren't in such a tense situation, this tea would taste even better. Cedric looks at me and finally asks the crucial question, why I wanted to leave. I lower my head and answer in a small voice that I felt I was causing him trouble. Cedric frowns and repeats trouble, clearly confused. I explain that Priscilla told me that because of me, he couldn't fulfill his nightly duties, which troubled him greatly. So I thought if I left, he could return to normal. It would be better that way. Cedric suddenly interrupts me, his tone clearly surprised, asking what I just said. I repeat quietly that he finds me very troublesome. He immediately explains that he doesn't remember saying such things, because Priscilla was sent away after saying just a few words. I'm completely stunned, filled with confusion, but I still can't help asking. Doing monitoring work and being unable to fulfill his duties must be troublesome. Hearing this, Cedric falls silent for a moment, then honestly says that at first he did find it somewhat troublesome. Hearing these words, my heart sinks. An indescribable sadness spreads through my heart. However, he suddenly changes his tone, which becomes unusually gentle. He says softly that he no longer thinks that way. I lift my head sharply to look at him, my eyes filled with delighted surprise. He says he was taught from childhood to live for the Duke's family, and the first thing he learned was to restrain his emotions. All his actions put the family's interests first. He never acted on emotions and grew up according to his elders' expectations. Later, he became Crown Prince Philip's capable assistant. Though he didn't dislike this life, he always felt something was missing. His gaze especially tender. He continues, saying he's now discovered that meals taste better when shared with someone. He's also discovered how enjoyable conversation with someone can be. He's even discovered how delicious handmade cookies are. Then he earnestly calls my name. He says these have nothing to do with work. He treasures the time spent with me. These words flow into my heart like warmth, moving me nearly to tears. So I smile and answer him firmly. I want to stay because I want to be with everyone. I want to be with Cedric. Cedric is extremely surprised hearing this. Then he breaks into a genuinely warm smile that warms my heart. The next morning, urgent knocking sounds at the door. This noise wakes Cedric, who is still sleeping. It also interrupts the pleasant dream I'm having. So we rush to the door in our nightclothes and ask in unison what's happening. After seeing who it is, I freeze. Standing at the door are Cyril, Philip, and Rufus. Seeing them, Cedric complains, asking why Cyril didn't just come in as usual. Cyril explains with a smile that, since he brought the other two today, he specifically came through the main entrance. I ask in confusion if something happened, thinking that Cyril and Rufus visiting frequently isn't unusual, but I didn't expect even Philip to come personally. Cyril explains that after learning about my escape attempt, they rushed over immediately. My heart tightens. Yesterday, the incident spread so quickly. Cyril says the tornado in the estate is surveillance he set up long ago. Only now do I understand that I've been under close surveillance all along. Cyril asks why I wanted to escape. I'm at a loss for words wanting. To say the reason involves Cedric, but finding it hard to articulate. I should come to his house, he'll treat me like a wife. I'm instantly shocked hearing the word wife. Hearing this, Rufus instantly appears in front of Cyril, interrupting him with obvious anger. He insists that even if I leave, I should return to my own home, and absolutely cannot go to Cyril's. He even turns to me for confirmation, asking if I have anywhere else to go besides my own home. After all, I don't have any friends. This hurts me again, but thinking about it returning to the Von Luck family with my current personality would only make them worry. So I quickly find an excuse to decline, saying returning would only cause trouble. Saying this won't be finished quickly. So the five of us head to the reception room together. Hannah quickly brings in prepared refreshments. Philip brings up the topic first, saying I seem to have thoughts of leaving here. Hearing this, I panic instantly. My heart fills with fear. I'm done for. Am I going to be punished? Could it be execution? But unexpectedly, Philip suddenly says, there are empty rooms in the royal capital as well. I freeze, not understanding his meaning. He continues saying, next time I want to leave, I can go to the royal capital. I think to myself as if I'd go there. Though Philip's smile appears warm on the surface, I still feel scared. After all, I was almost sentenced to punishment. At this moment, Philip is calculating internally, thinking that moving me to the royal capital would make surveillance more convenient. Previously, he thought I was interested in Cedric, and keeping me here would make extracting information easier. But clearly that's not working now. He sneaks a glance at Cedric, suspecting Cedric probably won't agree with his current plan. At this moment, Cyril suddenly remembers something and asks where his tornado went. Hannah calmly answers from behind him that it was broken. Cyril asks in surprise why. Hannah explains that the tornado kept shouting and was too noisy, so she broke it. Cyril becomes even more surprised, persistently asking how Hannah broke it with her bare hands. Helplessly commenting that Cyril's reaction is too absurd. Then he turns to look at me and asks again about my reason for wanting to leave. I feel helpless. I thought we'd move past this topic, but it's circled back. Rufus says that regardless of the reason, he'll stand on my side. Then he corrects himself awkwardly, saying, the Von Luck family will always stand on my side. But I'm so anxious right now that I'm not paying attention to Rufus's words at all. I'm only worried about not being able to give Philip a satisfactory explanation and being charged with some crime. While I'm anxious, Cedric suddenly speaks up. I immediately look at him as if being saved. He says, I wanted to get some air because life here had become exhausting and depressing. I'm filled with surprise, not expecting him to speak up for me, and he found such a reasonable explanation truly worthy of Cedric. Philip counters saying, if I wanted fresh air, I could have just asked to go out. No need to sneak away. Cedric explains on my behalf that I'm here because of the royal decree and thought I wouldn't be allowed to go out, which is why I did something foolish. Philip makes a meaningful sound of understanding, yet his gaze remains locked on me. I nervously maintain proper posture, not daring to move. His gaze carries a heavy, oppressive weight that nearly suffocates me. When he finally stops pressing, I exhale with relief. However, Philip suddenly stands up. He walks slowly toward me and alarm bells ring in my mind. I can't figure out his intentions at all. Watching him approach, fear rises within me. What's happening? What's happening? Why is he getting closer? What is he going to do? This is terrifying. Then he reaches into his coat for something. He extends it toward me. I instinctively close my eyes and flinch, expecting something bad to happen. But after waiting a few seconds with nothing happening, I open my eyes in confusion. I see he's holding a ticket. He says it's for a theatrical performance. Perfect for getting some fresh air. So I take the ticket and respond softly. Looking down, I discover there are actually 2 tickets. I ask in confusion why there are 2. Philip says I can't go alone. So he suggests that Cedric and I go together. Cedric is clearly taken aback hearing this. Hearing this, my heart races instantly. Going with just Cedric. Isn't this a date? The next day, Hannah helps me into a dress, and the word date keeps popping into my mind. As she picks up a comb to do my hair, I'm still lost in thought. Is this really a date? It isn't until my hair is nearly done that I suddenly realize. I shout in surprise. A date. Hannah says, my reaction is too slow, mentioning I had a fiancé and should have been on dates before. I nod in agreement, but I'm not confident inside. I think of the original owner's previous dates, cold tea gatherings where they ignored each other, and boring parties where they didn't speak, each doing their own thing. Even trips where they shared a carriage but remained silent the entire journey. I can't help but wonder, could those cold interactions really be called dates? Hannah finishes my hair and says with satisfaction, they're all done. Then a servant opens my door. I walk out gracefully, trying to appear natural. I look up and see Cedric standing at the door. Today he's wearing a sharp formal suit that makes him look more handsome than usual, especially striking. I'm somewhat amazed. I didn't expect him to dress up specially for this outing. The butler gently reminds Cedric beside him to take my hand and escort me to the carriage. So Cedric extends his hand toward me, gently asking me to give him my hand. My cheeks burn as I respond softly. Okay. I slowly place my hand in his palm. He helps me into the carriage, the warmth from his fingertips making my heart beat faster. Sitting in the carriage, I think to myself, starting off this intimate, my heart won't be able to take it. It's all because everyone keeps saying, it's a date. It's a date. Creating this atmosphere, I repeatedly tell myself it's just an outing to watch a performance, just a regular outing. He's incredibly handsome. I hesitate before apologizing to him for troubling him to accompany me out. Hearing this, Cedric looks up at me. He says softly and seriously that he doesn't mind at all. I freeze, not expecting him to say this, warmth spreading through my heart. Before I can ask more, Cedric looks out the window and says, "We've arrived," indicating the carriage has stopped. He gets out first, then turns to help me down. I'm still thinking about what he meant by doesn't mind. We arrive at the opera house. Inside, the seats are filled with audience members, everyone's faces showing anticipation. Cedric leads me to the very important person seats. The view is excellent. We can see the stage clearly. After sitting down, I start to worry. Will I be able to enjoy watching this performance? After all, this is my first time watching a performance, and in another world at that, different from modern shows. However, I'm clearly overthinking because I've become completely immersed and can't pull myself away. This is amazing. The performance is absolutely wonderful. The magical effects in the play are no less impressive than modern productions. Even better since this is real magic. I applaud excitedly and blurt out bravo. After shouting it, I regret it. Oh no, bravo probably isn't used in this world, is it? So I quickly explain that it's recent slang among young people. Used to express being moved, Cedric asks in confusion, if that's so. I quickly nod, saying, yes, it's very popular. Then he says thoughtfully, he'll try using it on the estate servants and make it popular when he returns. After most of the audience has dispersed, Cedric stands and asks if we should leave. I quickly nod and say, yes, let's go home. What I don't expect is him saying he wants to take a walk on the street with me. I widen my eyes in surprise. This really does seem more like a date now. On the street, I can't help but marvel at the various novel shops. Wow, amazing. There are so many different shops, Cedric says with a smile that this is the liveliest place in the royal capital. His expression gentle. I happily look around, completely unaware of Cedric's expression. Then he suggests going nearby to buy me a drink, worried I'm thirsty. I quickly nod and say, okay. I find a corner and sit down, thinking this spot isn't crowded and will be easy to find. My heart is racing with butterflies. I think this really is a date. Suddenly, someone calls out, startling me. I quickly look up to see who it is. A masked person stands before me holding a glowing necklace. She hands the necklace over, saying it's a special item she's only selling to me. I immediately recognize this as a scam and quickly say, "No thanks, I'm in a hurry." After saying this, I turn to leave, but she says, "This necklace can predict the future." I immediately stop, my interest piqued. I turn back, half believing, and ask if this is true. She gives me an affirmative answer. So I take the necklace, thinking that I can predict the future. I'll know the outcome of these anxious days. After all, this is a world with magic and spirits. Maybe such a necklace really exists. I ask how to see the future, but she stammers without giving a direct answer. Suddenly, I feel a severe headache. And I finally collapse. Before fainting, I see the masked person smirking coldly. She says triumphantly that she's finally caught me successfully. Now it's time to execute the plan. Before long, Cedric returns with drinks and doesn't see me. He looks around. He only sees the hat I wore when leaving, now lying alone on the ground. In the deep night, dense rain beats violently against the palace. Cedric, soaked through by rain, rushes urgently through the palace gates. He pushes open Philip's study door without hesitation. Philip sees him disheveled like this for the first time. He, who is always so composed, asks in surprise what happened. Cedric's voice is tight with tension, clearly trembling. He reports in anguish that Christina has been kidnapped and disappeared. Meanwhile, in an unfamiliar abandoned warehouse, I slowly open my heavy eyelids, my head throbbing with dull pain. My heart fills with helplessness and panic. I try to get up, but discover I can't move freely at all. Only then do I realize my hands and feet are tightly bound with rough rope. I instantly understand that I was deceived by that necklace-selling masked person. At this moment, low male voices can be faintly heard outside the door. I quietly move my body closer to the door and peer carefully through the gap. I see the masked person reporting the successful capture to a burly man. The leader nods with satisfaction and praise. I study his face carefully, but I discover I've never seen this unfamiliar face in my memories. Suddenly, the leader turns toward the warehouse and loudly orders me to come out. I have no choice but to suppress my fear, steel myself, and slowly walk out. The leader looks me up and down and asks provocatively if I had a good dream. I force myself to stay calm, suppressing my fear, and retort that it feels like I'm still in a nightmare. I tell myself that no matter what their purpose is, I can't let them see that I'm afraid. Taking a deep breath to gather my courage, I ask what they want. The leader says they were simply hired to kidnap me. Nothing else matters to them. Money is the only thing they're interested in. They don't care about anything else. They say excitedly that their client pays generously just for kidnapping. They get a lot of money. I realize with alarm that someone specifically paid them to kidnap me and quickly ask who hired them. But the leader shrugs, saying he doesn't know. The client wore a mask and used a fake name, but they don't care who the client is. Getting paid is enough. I figure they're not lying, so I probably won't get more information from them. At this moment, the leader suddenly draws his sword from his waist, his gaze cold. He raises the sword high as if it will fall on me the next second. I close my eyes in fear and shrink to the side, but I feel no pain, only a lightness on my head as a few strands of hair fall to the ground. The leader picks up my hair, saying that delivering my distinctive hair to the client will get them the rest of their payment. Next, they start discussing what to do with me. One suggests selling me. He says, "Someone this pretty will fetch a good price," while another suggests demanding ransom from my family for even more money. Saying that since I've seen their faces, it's best to eliminate me to avoid future trouble. Hearing this, I'm terrified. At this moment, the masked person suddenly objects, saying she won't do this. The leader freezes and asks what she's talking about at a time like this. The masked person says they agreed at the start not to kill anyone. They can't break that agreement. I realize they weren't originally partners. The leader grunts, saying they haven't received full payment yet, so they'll hold off for now. Then he roughly grabs my arm and pushes me toward a small room, saying I'll stay there for now. He also pushes the masked person in telling them to stay put and not wander. After the door closes, only the two of us remain in the room. The atmosphere is especially awkward. After hesitating, I speak up to thank them for standing up to protect me earlier, but they immediately deny it, saying they're just acting according to their principles. They flatly refuse, saying it's impossible. This room has no windows, only one exit. They add that the exit leads right to where the kidnappers are. If we're caught trying to escape, I'm done for. After hearing this, I have to give up and resign myself to staying put. But I still can't help wondering why I always encounter such unlucky situations. I imagine the kidnappers outside are probably still discussing what to do with me. While thinking this, I see the masked person crouching in a corner actually lifting a wooden plank. Nervous yet curious, I ask quietly what they're doing, but they immediately cover my mouth, telling me not to make a sound. The masked person releases their hand and says, "Of course they wouldn't come here with only one way out. Those kidnappers aren't smart enough yet to notice there's an underground tunnel here." I ask in confusion why they were with the kidnappers earlier. "Aren't they partners?" they answer. "It was just temporary cooperation. After all, those kidnappers are too stupid. If they had approached me, it would only have aroused my suspicion." I nod, finding this very reasonable. After saying this, they crawl into the tunnel first and look back, telling me to hurry up and not waste time. I quickly follow. After crawling for a while, I ask what this place is. They say it's probably a tunnel left from an old war. Then they complain that taking this job was a miscalculation. They haven't even received payment. I remember earlier and ask why they objected to the kidnappers killing me. They say not being involved in killing is their principle, one they don't easily break. I ask in confusion, "But aren't they still doing bad things?" Hearing this, they suddenly glare at me saying, "A privileged young lady like me, born with a silver spoon, wouldn't understand. Like someone born into a family where both parents are criminals." I freeze after hearing this empathy, welling up inside me. I never expected them to have such a background, thinking about what they said about not receiving fate's favor. I feel uncomfortable too. It seems the me in my modern life was the same way. After crawling for quite a while, we finally emerge from the tunnel. Just as we think we're finally safe, someone suddenly swings a sword at the masked person. I am utterly stunned, and when I finally make out the face of the newcomer, I cannot help but cry out. It is Cedric. Cedric does not look at me. His gaze locks onto the injured masked figure. His eyes ice cold, he grips the sword hilt, his voice devoid of warmth, asking the masked figure if they are prepared to die. Watching Cedric raise his sword toward the masked figure, I suddenly realize something is wrong. He must have mistaken the masked figure for the kidnapper. I rush forward, spreading my arms to shield the masked figure, frantically explaining to Cedric that she is not a villain. Cedric frowns, saying, "This person matches the kidnapper's description perfectly, and there is no reason it should not be her." I quickly explained that many things happened in between, and this person actually helped me considerably. Simply saying he will hear the full explanation later and begins untying me first. The moment the rope loosens, men in black charge toward us with fierce momentum. Cedric looks at them, saying he will deal with these people first, and tells me to stay back. He raises his hand and blocks the first strike from the men in black. The force is so powerful that it sends his opponent flying backward, their numbers far exceeding expectations. Yet Cedric remains completely unfazed. He shouts at the burly man who leads them, demanding to know if they were the ones who kidnapped me. The burly man responds arrogantly that they did, adding that their job is not finished yet and demanding they hand me over immediately. Cedric coldly refuses. The moment his words end, he engages in combat with the leader. Seeing he cannot win, the leader shouts for everyone to attack together, claiming that Cedric stands alone and will surely lose. The men in black swarm forward, encircling Cedric completely, standing behind them. My heart leaps into my throat as I watch, consumed with worry. Yet within moments, Cedric drives back all the men in black. His movements are swift and impressive. I watch in utter disbelief, never imagining he could be this formidable, defeating the enemies in mere moments. Cedric walks up to the leader and tells him, "These people are all still alive, so he need not worry." Then, he presses the sword against his neck, demanding to know who hired them to kidnap me. The burly man trembles as he speaks, saying he truly does not know, that they simply take money to do the job. Cedric nods, slowly raising his sword, saying that in that case he has no further use. The burly man turns deathly pale with terror, believing he is about to die, and collapses there, waiting for death. Seeing this, I rush over immediately and embrace Cedric from behind, holding his waist to stop him. I urgently say, "No, he cannot kill him." Cedric asks in confusion, "Why not?" He says, "This man kidnapped me and deserves punishment." His tone carries lingering fear as he says, "If they had never found me, he does not know what might have happened." Therefore, such a person truly deserves death. As he speaks, he continues pressing the sword against the leader's neck. I do not back down, insisting that even so, I do not want to see his hands stained with blood. Cedric is utterly astonished, never expecting this to be my reason for stopping him. However, this is neither a battlefield nor an execution ground, and I do not want him to bear the weight of taking a life in such circumstances. After hearing this, Cedric falls silent for several seconds, then he slowly moves the sword away. Finally, she entirely. He tells the burly man that kidnapping nobility is a grave crime, and he will receive appropriate punishment. When that time comes, it may be more painful than death. He tells the leader to prepare himself, his tone ice cold. Upon hearing this, the leader's legs give out from fear. With a thud, he collapses to the ground and faints. I breathe a sigh of relief, turning to Cedric to thank him, grateful that he listened to me. Cedric suddenly reaches out and pulls me tightly into his embrace. My cheeks burn instantly, and I am too nervous to know what to say. I mumble softly, trying to break the awkwardness. However, Cedric speaks first, saying how truly grateful he is that I am safe and unharmed. Warmth floods through my heart. He has been worried about me all along. His earlier coldness was merely a facade. Tears begin falling before I can stop them. Sobbing in his arms, I tell him how truly frightened I was, just now thinking I was doomed. Saying that leaving me alone back then was his oversight. His voice full of self-reproach. Cedric cups my face, gently wiping away my tears with his fingertips. He promises this will never happen again. His gaze is resolute as he says. Looking at his gentle gaze, my cheeks burn even hotter. I want to say something in response, but a sudden commotion interrupts me. Cyril appears suddenly, calling out to Cedric. He immediately begins complaining that Cedric acted without waiting for him, saying he also wanted to protect me. Cedric turns back to retort, saying they were moving too slowly, and he had no choice but to act first. Cyril does not argue further. He points to another area, alerting us to a situation that needs stopping. I follow his gaze. I see Hannah holding her spear aimed at the leader, about to strike down. I rush over to stop her. Hannah insists there is no need to worry, saying she can finish it in one strike. As we struggle, someone calls my name. I turn back to see Rufus running over, his expression deeply anxious. I ask if he came specifically looking for me. Rufus replies awkwardly that worrying about his sister is what a brother should do. His words move me deeply. He starts shilly, telling me not to look at him that way. Rufus suddenly remembers something, saying someone over there is trying to escape, and directing us to look. I realize the masked figure is attempting to slip away but is tightly bound by Rufus's vines. Only then do I realize I had completely forgotten about her. I struggle with how to deal with the masked figure. After all, she did help me, and arresting her seems too heartless. Suddenly, Philip's voice comes from behind me, asking if I am troubled about how to handle this. I confirm that I am. My heart jumps in alarm. When did he arrive here? I never noticed him approaching. Philip says they will handle the kidnappers and the masked figure should be brought back to the Duke's estate first, before deciding. I nod in agreement instinctively, not wanting to get too close to Philip. For me right now, he still inspires a sense of dread. Back at the Duke's estate, the servants all gather around when they see my return, nervously asking if I am all right. I made everyone worry, my heart full of gratitude. Cedric suddenly speaks up, telling all the servants to return to their posts. The servants reluctantly leave while grumbling that they were also very worried and wanted to chat with me longer. We discuss how to handle her next, just as I am uncertain what to do. Hannah picks up her spear again, saying she can resolve this in one strike. I immediately refuse. Then I begin thinking to myself. Finally, an idea comes to me. At this moment, Cyril leans in, asking if I want his tornado to teach the masked figure a lesson. I quickly deny this, then speak out. I share my idea of having the masked figure stay and work at the estate. The moment these words leave my mouth, everyone falls silent. I begin to feel nervous. Rufus speaks first, saying I have lost my mind. Cyril echoes him, saying it would be better to let a tornado spin her. I urgently call for everyone to calm down, saying that regardless, the masked figure did help me. The masked figure suddenly speaks, asking if I am pitying her, her tone laced with mockery. Her gaze ice cold. At these words, everyone begins proposing various disposal methods again. The scene becomes even more chaotic. To stabilize the situation, I turn my head to look at her. I admit to her that I may indeed feel sympathy for her. Then I extend my hand toward her. I ask if she truly wants to remain in a world of darkness forever. Why not try living a normal life? My gaze is earnest and sincere. The masked figure freezes, staring at my hand. She recalls those miserable times from her past. Those painful memories buried deep in her heart surge through her mind like a tide. After several seconds, she finally reaches out and takes my hand. She says that being the case, I cannot abandon her halfway. I nod firmly, saying, "Of course I will not," telling her to rest assured. The masked figure says, "These are my own words." As she reaches up and removes the hood from her head, the moment I see her face clearly, I freeze in shock. She is actually a girl, and her short pink hair is absolutely adorable. She looks at me somewhat uncomfortably, saying, "It is a promise." Then I quickly agree, my heartbeat quickening because I am truly charmed by her appearance. However, I cannot fall asleep at all. My mind continuously replays the various events and conversations from the day. Too many things happened, all too chaotic. This makes it impossible for my mind to settle. So I decide to go for a walk. Perhaps that will help calm my emotions. I have just raised my hand to open the door lock, when suddenly a tall shadow appears outside the door, making my heart tighten. I cry out in alarm. Looking closely, I recognize that it is actually Cedric standing outside the door. I ask in confusion why he is here. Cedric says he was somewhat worried about my condition and came to check on me after finishing his work. He asks if I am going out, his gaze filled with concern. I shake my head, saying no, that I simply cannot sleep and wanted to get up and move around. Cedric stares at me for several seconds as if thinking about something. After a moment of silence, he suddenly speaks, asking if I want to come to his room, his tone very soft. Hearing these words, I freeze instantly, completely unprepared for him to say this. My heartbeat immediately quickens. In the end, I still follow Cedric to his room. As for how I agreed and ended up following him here, I have already forgotten. Then Cedric brings me a cup of steaming hot milk. He carefully hands it to me personally, and I quickly thank him repeatedly. I gently take the cup and sip the warm milk in small mouthfuls. The warm milk slides down my throat, and the warmth spreads from my stomach throughout my entire body. I close my eyes in contentment. Before I can speak, I hear Cedric say softly that if I am frightened staying alone, I might as well rest together with him. These words shock me instantly. I cannot help but choke on a mouthful of milk and begin coughing violently. Cedric explains that the bed is very large and there is no need to worry about crowding. I notice it is indeed spacious. However, the size of the bed is not the issue at all. Before I finish speaking, he stands up. Before I can react, he reaches out and gently lifts me into his arms. His movements very tender. Caught off guard, I let out a small gasp, my hands instinctively clutching his collar. He carries me steadily to the bedside. He gently places me on the soft bedding. I sit on the edge of the bed, still not recovered, my heart pounding wildly. Cedric reaches out and pats the space beside him, indicating I should lie down and relax. He lies down first on the other side of the bed, turning on his side to look at me, saying he will stay with me. My heart races with anxiety and panic. I silently cry out that this is the most nerve-wracking thing of all, yet thinking that he is doing this because he is worried about me, I slowly let go of my concerns. After hesitating for a few seconds, I slowly lie down facing him. Now I can clearly sense his presence from this bed. At this moment, Cedric's voice sounds by my ear. He speaks with lingering fear, saying how fortunate it is that I am unharmed. Otherwise, he would not have known what to do. These words send a wave of warmth through my heart. So, this is how warm and blissful it feels to be genuinely cared for. I cannot help but recall that no one ever cared for me like this before, truly worried about me in this world. Having people around me who care so much truly warms my heart. I apologize softly, promising not to act on my own again in the future. Cedric responds softly, adding that otherwise he might want to lock me up. These words make my heartbeat accelerate instantly. Could Cedric possibly have feelings for me? However, the next second, I dismiss this thought immediately. He is simply worried about me. That is all. I sit up and look at him earnestly, thanking him for coming to rescue me in time, saying I was truly happy to go out with him. After hearing this, Cedric shows a gentle smile on his face. Staring at his face, I suddenly notice a bit of white milk residue at the corner of his mouth, so I reach out saying I want to help wipe away the milk from his mouth. However, just as my fingertips are about to touch him, he suddenly freezes. Cedric's cheeks slowly flush with color. He also sits up and softly calls my name. Then he slowly leans closer to me. Our distance grows even closer. I can feel his breath on my face, my heart pounding as if it might burst. So I shyly close my eyes, but instead he hands me a small mirror, reminding me that my mouth also has a stain. I look at the mirror and freeze instantly. There is actually a tiny milk mustache at the corner of my mouth. I quickly turn away and frantically wipe it with my hand, mortified and embarrassed. I silently blame myself for misunderstanding that he would kiss me, saying in a flustered voice that it is time to sleep and bidding him good night, ending this awkward situation. At night, the two of us lie side by side in bed. However, my heart refuses to calm down. I toss and turn for a long time, but still cannot fall asleep. A long while passes like this. Finally, I fall into a peaceful sleep. Thus, I do not notice that Cedric has already awakened and is watching my sleeping face, his gaze resting tenderly on me. His fingertips lightly touch the corner of his own mouth, as if savoring the moment when he leaned close to me earlier. He does not know what he actually wanted to do when he leaned so close. The next morning, I finally awaken from my slumber. The moment I open my eyes, I see Cedric's face, and for a moment I cannot process what is happening. Only then do I suddenly remember that I slept in his room last night. Images from last night surface in my mind again. When he leaned close, I thought I was about to be kissed. Thinking of this, I quickly raise my hand to touch the corner of my mouth, checking if there is still any milk mustache remaining. Then I unconsciously glance toward Cedric. His eyes are still closed. Sunlight outlines his features, his face so refined that one cannot look away. No wonder Sebastian wanted to paint him. This face is truly exceptional. I finally understand why the original Christina pursued him so fervently. I stare at his face. A thought emerges. Just touching it slightly should be acceptable, right? After hesitating for quite a while, I still gently reach out my hand. My fingertips lightly touch his cheek. Unexpectedly, his cheek is smooth and elastic, so pleasant that my heart trembles. Despite frequently fighting on battlefields, his skin is flawless without a single scar. I cannot resist touching it a few more times. Could it be that my healing magic last time made this handsome face even more remarkable? The more I look, the more stunning it appears. This is truly breathtaking beauty beyond reproach. At this moment, Cedric suddenly opens his eyes. He greets me with a calm good morning. I hastily return the greeting. The air instantly becomes awkward. I quickly sit up, my mind racing anxiously. I am in trouble now. There is absolutely no way to gloss over this. However, he says calmly that I can touch as I please without the slightest hint of reproach. He even mentions that I used to like his face before. Did I not? Hearing this makes me feel even more mortified. So he remembers all those things. However, since he said this, I steal a glance at him, seeing he is not angry. I cannot resist wanting to reach out and touch his face again. But at this moment, the door suddenly bursts open. Cyril shouts that I have gone missing. Then he sees the two of us on the bed. His eyes widen to the size of saucers, unable to react for quite some time. Cedric and I also freeze. The room falls into complete silence. The atmosphere is extremely awkward. Cyril rushes over and grabs Cedric by the collar. His expression is fierce with anger, threatening to attack him with magic. I quickly step forward to intervene, saying there is a reason for this and urging him not to act rashly. The moment I speak, my hands are bound by vines. I turn my head to see Rufus and Philip also standing at the doorway. Rufus is fuming with anger, saying he firmly opposes any impure interactions I have with the opposite sex. He also accuses Cedric, saying he trusted him and entrusted me to his care. Then an energy orb forms in his hand as he shouts about turning this place into a jungle. I urgently shout to stop him. I quickly explain what happened, emphasizing there were no impure thoughts. Rufus frowns and asks if truly nothing happened, his gaze probing. I hastily assure him, saying truly nothing happened and not to misunderstand. Only then does Rufus finally believe me. After all, both Cedric's and my clothing are perfectly intact. I turn toward Rufus, realizing that despite his young age, he understands such matters. So I ask him if he has been reading the romance novels I keep at home. Rufus's face flushes instantly. He loudly denies it. Clearly, he is lying. I am certain in my heart that he has definitely been reading those romance novels in my collection. Cyril says at this moment that fortunately they stopped things in time, otherwise they nearly caused trouble. He adds that they almost blew up the estate and nearly injured Cedric. Then Philip speaks up saying he has something to discuss, suggesting they move to another location first. He looks at me. He reminds me that I should change clothes. Only then do I remember I am wearing my nightgown. I cry out and rush to change clothes. Everyone then leaves one after another, their footsteps gradually fading away. He approaches me, saying I need not worry about having dirt on my face. In reality, I only have an adorable sleeping face. After hearing this, my cheeks burn instantly and my heart races. He gazes at me, a gentle smile appearing on his face. I never expected he had already been awake. Then he definitely noticed all my actions. After changing clothes, everyone gathers in the reception room at the Duke's estate. However, I did not expect my father, Marke von Luck, and my mother, Lady von Luck, to also be here. I truly cannot understand what the current situation is. At this moment, Philip is the first to break the silence. His gaze falls on me as he says clearly that I should return home. I want to argue, however. Philip speaks first, saying this kidnapping was entirely their oversight, admitting they failed to protect me properly. I freeze, puzzled how I, who should be a criminal waiting investigation, have become an object of protection. Philip turns toward my parents, solemnly expressing his apologies, his tone full of remorse. Then, Mother proposes bringing me back home, saying even if I need to mend my ways, she can teach me at home. Hearing the phrase mend my ways confuses me even more. I do not understand where this notion comes from. At this moment, Cedric suddenly speaks up, saying he objects. He also assures them that the estate has strict security, and there will be no further incidents. Philip says no more. He simply stands and says he must take his leave. He says he needs to discuss matters privately with Cedric, allowing us to enjoy our family time first. Before I can react, Cedric follows Philip out, glancing back at me as he leaves. Thus, only the three of us family members remain in the reception room. My parents suddenly step forward, crying as they embrace me tightly. They ask me with heartache if I was terribly frightened. Seeing this, I recall that they have always been overprotective of the original Christina. Mother complains that they should have refused the royal family's proposal and never let me stay at the Duke's estate. Father agrees, saying that although the royal family took me away on the pretext of correcting my mischievous behavior, I am fine now. I cannot help but ask if I was not kept here as punishment from the royal family. My parents freeze, saying I was merely mischievous and nowhere near deserving royal punishment. I bring up the matter of pushing Priscilla down the stairs. My parents smile and say I am adorably naive. Father explains that there was insufficient evidence at the time. The only witness was Priscilla, and ultimately I was the one who fell. Therefore, I would not be punished for this. I am even more confused. This is completely different from what I had heard. I also recall being threatened with execution if I erred again. Calming down to think about it, the original Christina was mischievous, but never did anything serious enough to warrant execution. The only major incident ever mentioned was the Priscilla affair. Yet even that brought no charges. So why exactly was I kept at the Duke's estate? Then Mother and Father begin discussing taking me back home. My mind is chaotic and confused. I want to leave first to sort out my thoughts. So I say I want to pick flowers and quickly run off. My parents stand behind me in confusion, not understanding why I suddenly want to pick flowers. Walking down the corridor, the more I think about it, the more something feels wrong. The situation was too chaotic initially for me to have any doubts. My parents both confirmed I received no punishment. So what was the explanation I heard before actually about turning the corner? I suddenly see Cedric and Philip conversing. I hear Cedric asking Philip the reason for sending me home. Philip explains that the reason he originally gave my parents was to let me mend my ways by entrusting me to Cedric. They have no way to forcibly keep me any longer. My heart jolts. The charges I bore were completely fabricated. I cannot understand what their reason for doing this could be. Cedric then asks what should be done about the grimoire. Philip says I might let my guard down at home, and plans to send spies to infiltrate my household. I freeze. What is a grimoire? Could it be they believe the grimoire is in my possession? Then I hear Cedric defending me, saying I would never commit such treasonous acts as destroying the nation. He also says I am different now from before. A wave of emotion moves through my heart. I never expected he would stand up for me. Too focused on listening to their conversation, I accidentally bump into a nearby flower pot, creating a noise. Philip calls out alertly, asking who is there, looking in my direction. I know I cannot hide any longer and can only step out. Out. I think to myself that I am truly in trouble now. Cedric sees it is me, his tone filled with concern as he asks if I heard everything. I take a deep breath to calm myself. I walk toward them step by step. I have only one question in my heart: what exactly is this grimoire they keep mentioning?